Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to day 2 of the NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. This event, it brings together global leaders, policy makers, industry captains, and influencers from all walks of life to discuss India's role in the world. India's growth today is significantly shaping the world's future.
We are in fact poised to become the third largest economy by the year 2030. But whether it's technological advancements, driving innovation, creating new opportunities, or whether it's driving global efforts to combat climate change, India is making its mark, and how?
Well, the NDTV World Summit is co-presented by Adani, powered by Pernod Richard, co-powered by GE Aerospace, supercharged by Charge Zone, knowledge partner Amrita Vishwas Vidyapeetham, e-mobility partner Billion E Community Empowerment Partner, Kamla Ankibai Ghamandiram Guvani Trust, Associate Partner FedEx.
Our beverage partners, Lacafe, Associate Partners, M3M Foundation, our insurance partners, LIC, our influencer partners, Who's That 360, our print partner, Hindustan Times, and our state partners, the Uttar Pradesh government, the Uttarakhand government, and the Chhattisgarh government.
In fact, let's kickstart the day with a discussion on aligning profit with purpose.
After all, who says you can't have a growing bottom line that isn't ethically achieved? Where our next panel is here, we have them to remind us of all the thread that holds people, the planet, and profit together. Joining us now on stage, Mustafa Wajid, Gagandeep Sethi, and Ajay Pillai with NDTV's Tanima Biswas.
Hi, thank you to all of you for joining us on day 2 of NDTV World Summit, and I welcome all my guests on stage as well. Now, there is a growing movement towards sustainable living with people not just making environmentally conscious decisions, but with companies also investing in sustainable growth. In this session, we'll focus on environmental, social, and governance framework, also better known as ESG, where companies, in fact, are focusing on this, and we'll explore the vital intersection of profit and purpose. As India aims to become a $5 trillion economy, embedding ESG into its core business models is one of the essential steps for companies to drive long-term profitability and sustainable growth. ESG principles are no longer buzzwords, but they represent a transformative approach to business that can drive long-term value. Our esteemed panelists bring a wealth of experience from various sectors to this discussion. I am joined by Gagandeep Sethi, Senior Vice President, Integrated Operations and Sustainability and Responsibility for Pernod Ricard, India. Mustafa Wajid, co-founder of Billion E, which is, of course, a clean mobility platform. And Mr. Ajay Pillai, Partner, Sustainability and Climate Change at Deloitte. Thank you all for joining us on this discussion. Starting with you, Mr. Sethi, what are some of the sustainability goals for Pernod Ricard, and how do you merge profitability with purpose, and how is ESG one of the foundational blocks when you do that?
Thank you, Tanima, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel. For Pernod Ricard, globally, we have a very comprehensive ESG program under the umbrella name, what we call as Good Times from a Good Place. It is super aligned to the ESG principles and the UN Sustainable Development Goals with its 4 elements, core elements of nurturing the terroir. Terroir is a French word, and what it means is the terrain, where the land, the Mother Earth, from where we draw all our resources. And we, being a company in the alcobev sector, it's grain to glass. So the starting point is the grain from the land. So everything that we do while consuming those resources, we have to ensure we restore back the balance of the earth. The second most important element is around circular making, right? So while we produce products which delight our customers and consumers, we do it in a sustainable manner, right? In terms of maintaining the circularity, end-to-end value chain, right from the beginning that is our backend, which is our suppliers, to the entire processing, which happens in our manufacturing facilities, and then the downstream in terms of the customer and the consumer, right? So that's the second element. The third element is all around valuing people, and that's the social cause, again, aligned to the ESG principles, where diversity and inclusion is a big impetus, and we are fully committed in terms of increasing the inclusion of gender in our workforce as well. And so those are the elements, and what India draws out of those elements is the cascade effect, right? So whether it is carbon neutrality, we are a water consuming product in terms of managing our water balance and hence our water targets. And also many steps that have been taken, which obviously will be alluded in the session for sure.
Right. Mr. Mustafa Wajid, if I can draw you into the conversation now, how is Billion E merging ESG into its core business model?
Yeah, thank you for that. Ellarigu, namaskara. My name is Mustafa, I'm from Bangalore. At Billion Electric, the question that she's asking specifically is focused on reducing the consumption of petroleum products in transportation. When you look at the environment issues as well as energy security issues, the two big elephants in the room are fossil fuels which are used for generating electricity, and the other one, which is equally large, is fossil fuels that are used for transportation. Just to put a number on this, India consumes about close to 150 million metric tons of petrol and diesel for transportation. This is apart from other fuels that we consume. You can imagine the amount of emissions that are coming. You can imagine the value of the imports that are going to be driven by this consumption. And at Billion Electric, we are trying to address, and hopefully we'll do a good job of it. We've already started deploying electric trucks and as an electric truck platform for logistics. So by bringing down the carbon emissions in the transportation sector, by the way, half of India's diesel consumption happens on the highways. And that's a very, very important thing to remember. So we are at it, and we believe that decarbonizing the transportation sector at one level is our corporate objective. And we will, the name Billion actually means that we would like to do 1 billion kilometers of decarbonized transportation. Now, whether this billion comes in a year or in cumulatively over 2 years or maybe even hopefully in a month as we go forward, this is something that we will see. Just to mention one thing, India's transportation requirements have multiplied by 3 times in the last 10 years. It's normally assessed in what we call as ton kilometers. And if you see the government publicate reports on this, 10 years ago we were at 1 trillion ton kilometers. Last year we crossed 3. So it's growing faster than the GDP. And that's because of increased urbanization, increased, I would say, consumerism, and also the e-commerce sector is also contributing to it. So that's something that we need to remember. And at Billion E, we would like to see how to reduce not just the decarbonization, but also make this transportation more sustainable. Thank you.
Mr. Pillai, if I can have your point of view now. Of course, the companies are going to discuss further on how they ensure that they are following ESG principles when in their business models. But what are some of the challenges you have seen firms facing when following ESG, and does it differ across sectors?
The key challenges I can put up top 3 or 4 challenges that I feel that the companies face. Number one is the quality of data and availability of reliable data to report on ESG. It requires a proper process to be followed at the operational level to have good data which can be reported. So the quality of data is right now very dependent on how tedious you are with the processes that you have in place, and it is doubtful at many places. Number 2 is the awareness level and expertise within the system for ESG to know that what is exactly expected from them to actually go out and report in ESG. So there are not many senior leadership members who are tuned to or aware of sustainability to the extent that is required. I'm not saying it is like that for everybody, but there are efforts being done for that. So, and third is the intent. As long as you believe that ESG is one more thing to be done, And the intent does not come from the top management that we really believe in ESG and we are not doing it to show somebody, but we really want to imbibe it as part of our business model. It will always remain, a sideline effect. So the quality of ESG will always be a challenge. And when you say sector-wise, well, different sectors have different parameters. For an IT industry, maybe data breach is a social issue. For an automobile industry or somebody who is water intense, availability of water, social license to operate, that would be. So sector-wise, these parameters change, but if you have policies and procedures which are in place, that should be similar for most of them.
Right. We'll discuss further in terms of regulations and policies as well. But coming back to you, Mr. Sethi, how is Pernod Ricard India innovating its production processes in order to align further with the ESG goals?
Very important. Innovation has to be embraced, and we see it as a cornerstone as part of our endeavor to attain sustainable manufacturing practices. So it starts, there are various phases to it or elements to it. The first one is it starts with the design. Innovation to design the product, the service that is for the offering, right? And much work starts there. We've aligned our entire innovation process, the stage gate, in terms the right decisions around ESG happen at the right time, which is stage 0 and 1, and not after or post you've launched the product, right? So that's the starting point. And how we ensure our business decision making is entwined at that stage. Are we going for a product or a service which will address the sustainability part of our objectives, right? And then obviously many examples of that, right? And many of the industry firsts, right? In terms of you'll have to push the scale there, especially some of the initiatives that we've done right again from the back end. Sustainable sourcing, right? In terms of our product is primarily ethanol, right? And ethanol can be sourced from various sources and it can be manufactured in many ways. Some of them are very sustainable, many of them are not sustainable, but those smart choices and using technical innovation around those, switch of fuel from fossil fuels to biomass, which is more sustainable. Sourcing our primary packaging, secondary packaging materials like outer shipper cartons, which are FSC, Forest Stewardship Council certified, and touching almost 84% of our raw material is coming from that source. Those are the choices, and you innovate. Design to sustainable value. So degrammage, so primary packaging for us is glass bottles. It's one of the most sustainable, but it is highly intensive from energy standpoint when you manufacture glass. So the lower glass you use in your primary packaging is you're lowering the absolute energy consumption. Innovating in terms of reuse. Responsible consumption is obviously reducing the consumption, is also reusing as much you can reuse, right? So one big initiative, again, is around reuse of our bottles, which we call taking it back, the reverse logistics, washing them, bringing them to that impeccable quality, and reusing that. And for consumer, they won't be able to make out whether it is new or reused, right? So it has a huge, so that's also innovation of a sort. Green manufacturing, we've taken huge strides. One big switch from fossil fuels to biomass in our own facilities. Our group target on scope 1 and 2 reduction, which is carbon emission, which is due to burning of fuels in our own manufacturing facilities. Our group target is around 54% we have to achieve as per our SBT 2030. India is already sitting at 94%. So in many of these targets or objectives, we are leading the group because India is a huge volume, India is a huge consumption pool, and it has a huge impact and bearing on our group performance, right? So hence we are taking the lead in that aspect. Then using technology and innovation in our processes, right? Designing our processes the right way, so that we conserve the resources and we avoid wastages in the entire value stream. There we use technology also. So all our lines and our production processes are internet connected, IoT. They are connected, the consumptions are being monitored, then advanced tools of AI are being used to analyze how and where the losses are happening and how they can be prevented, right? So innovation in its all form is being used. And it is coming handy in terms of achieving the objectives that we have set for ourselves.
Right. I'm glad you mentioned AI as well. In fact, is that something that is being used more of late in terms of aligning your production processes with ESG?
Yeah, so the starting point to bring any improvement is to measure what is important. And and there is more and more data, as Mr. Pillai called out. So much of data is getting produced. It is becoming difficult to manage and read through that data, right? So you have to connect your lines and your manufacturing operations, get the relevant data, but then there has to be a layer which then screens that data and converts that into information which is based on which some decision can be taken. And that's where AI comes in a big way. Also in terms of problem solving, it helps in a big way, right? So it is very useful.
A handy tool there. Mustafa Wajid, if we, let's talk about carbon market and monetization of ESG. Now, the government has said that carbon trading scheme will be effective by 2026. But how soon do you see it maturing in the country?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic. We must remember that the legislation that was required to make this happen was passed only in December 22. It's less than 2 years ago. And this is a very big change. The vision of the government is to try and see how to create a carbon market like you have the stock market, to put it in simple terms. You must realize that the creation of the stock market took a hell of a lot of time. It's in our country, and digitalization, all that happened only recently in the last 2 decades. So I think carbon markets, the process is on. Policies are being contemplated and drafted. So yes, I think we are optimistic that we will see it kicking off in 2026. But as is with our country, there will be a lot of diverse issues. So to get them straightened out will take some more time. We are after all a very vocal democracy, and we keep objecting to so many things. So this will also undergo that treatment. But the important thing there is that for the first time, India will open up the possibility of monetizing carbon credits. So since this panel is headlined as aligning profit and purpose, by the way, I was just joking with everybody that that's a Bhagavad Gita topic actually. But we are trying to convert it into a commercial topic here. The reality is that carbon credits will come. It's not in the rear view mirror anymore. It's now ahead. It's looking at us in the face. There will be challenges, but good organizations who can understand this and change and adapt their processes. Like, for example, Gagan's team is doing, I think, a very good job of that. I think these will be the people who will generate these carbon credits. Because don't forget, there will always be a sector which will generate carbon debits. You cannot go away from it. For example, the steel industry, for example, the cement industry, and so on and so forth. So the reality is that there will be a very vibrant market. And there will be people wanting to buy carbon credits. I think a startling example of that was unfolded a few months ago when everybody realized that one of the biggest contributors to the Tesla bottom line in the US was carbon credits. Nobody had understood the implication of this earlier. But the reality is that Tesla sold carbon credits, and the guys who bought them were his competitors. General Motors, Ford, etc., etc. So I think we are changing that process, and I'm very optimistic that now that the legislation part is over, now the hard work has started. There will be some speed breakers and some potholes. Our systems are known for that, but that's our strength actually. The diversity and the width of opinion. So the process is much better, and I take great inspiration from the fact that the National Stock Exchange, for example, went through similar problems. But today, I'm very proud to say, and I've talked about this to people in other countries, that we have one of the most advanced stock markets in the world, if not the most. It's okay, there are always people who will try to play the fool, but by and large, we have leapfrogged, and I think our stock market is far ahead of some very mature stock markets which have been around for a century. So the reality is that we can do the same with our carbon markets. It will happen. Timelines in India must be a little flexible when we are doing something as radical as this. We saw it in the telecom sector, we saw it in the stock exchange, and I'm sure we'll see it in the carbon thing. But on a very positive note, it will happen. It's not in the rear view mirror. And decarbonization and sustainability can be monetized in the future and can add to companies' bottom lines.
But you're not putting a timeline to it just yet.
Well, I've lost enough hair to not commit numbers on calendars, dates. And 2026 is what we are all committed to. I come from the electricity sector, and electricity is one of the biggest problem areas for carbon. And therefore, we are all working hard at it. We hope to start trials sometime towards probably the end of next year, even before 26. And in 26, the idea is to go mainstream. But mainstreaming means that regulators have to be put in place. For example, we have SEBI, which regulates the stock market. Now, the question is still to be answered as to who will regulate the carbon market. So these are questions that will need answers. They may need some more parliamentary interventions. So it's a process, so let's be optimistic and look forward to it.
All right. Mr. Pillai, touching upon what Mr. Wajid was also talking about, regulatory frameworks in the country which exist, and how does that impact ESG, and are you an advocate for more regulations needed for that sector?
See, so far there aren't many regulatory frameworks for ESG. Actually, only the BRSR, which is mandated by SEBI, requires the top 1,000 listed by market capital to go out and report for sustainability. So largely, sustainability reporting or ESG reporting is voluntary, and there are too many frameworks to actually look at and report against. But the thing is that if we want to make it more compliant, or if you want people to be more pushing towards reporting, then there is a need for bringing in more people into the folds of reporting, and not just the top 1,000 listed. Even in the top 1,000 listed, many are still not very sure what they have to report. And what we have currently in terms of regulation in India is very limited. But that is not the only thing that is forcing people to report. Many of our companies or manufacturers are in the supply chain for Europe and other countries. And Europe has a well-defined regulatory requirement, and the subsidiaries operating in there, as well as if you have a bigger market, CSRD has come in Europe, and if you have a bigger market in Europe and you fall as large business, then also you will have to report according to their regulations also. So whether we want the regulation or not, we will be required to comply with the global requirements in a global market. So I may not be a bigger advocate of regulatory requirements, but there is a little lead, because we as Indians are not right now looking at ESG as something that is a part of business, but many of it is being reported because it has been mandated by SEBI, so we have to report. So there is a need where people voluntarily believe. There are big firms again, and there are a lot of big and small firms who are voluntarily reporting, and they are making a sincere effort also. I cannot paint everybody with the same brush, but I do see that there is a large majority still who have to wake up and see that ESG is required as part of, it's a global truth that, if you don't adopt it today, the entire supply chain, the markets, the lenders, the investors, everybody is going to push you towards that direction, and eventually you will have to adopt to that. So some amount of regulation, especially in the climate space and in the decarbonization space, is required. Yeah?
Right. And now I want to ask the question which probably, is one of the important challenges that companies face when it comes to following ESG or incorporating ESG in the business model. So in terms of costs or in terms of processes, what are some of the key changes that you've had to make for Pernod Ricard and Billion EE, and what are the hurdles that you've faced so far?
Interesting one. I think, first of all, it's more of a notion. It's a mindset. Personal experience has been that, to a large extent, the first few steps that we take in the ESG, it is profit neutral or, in fact, accretive, right? I mean, I'll just allude to some of the examples. Degrammage, right, of glass, degrammage of plastic, market bottle usage, sustainable switch of fuels. These are sustainable under the ESG principles, and hardly they come with a cost. And you improve your efficiencies, you reduce your losses, it's profit, right? I think till the tipping point comes wherein you've scratched the barrel, and I think there's a lot of opportunity which lies till we have reached that point. Once you reach that point, is when that decision has to be taken, in terms of the investments, right? And I think those are some of the challenges which come. Some part of that challenge can be addressed when you are making fresher and newer investments. When you're talking of capital investments, you're augmenting capacities. Can we have ESG principles in the design stage itself? So at that time, it is incremental or marginal or no cost, but you have designed for sustainability from the word go. Re-engineering is where the larger investment would come in. And I think to the point Mr. Pillai mentioned, I think policy, support, capital investment, subsidies, but there's a lot to be done till that point. So we should not directly jump. So I'm not advocating that. It's basically, the advocacy is more around improve internally as much you can. And when the decision point comes, the policy support, regulatory support has to be there from an investment standpoint so that we take the right decisions in that direction.
Mr. Wajid, the same question to you. What are some of the challenges or hurdles you faced?
Yeah, at Billion E, our focus and aim on which we've been making significant progress is to integrate renewable energy, electric mobility, and leveraging AI in the process so that we make the transportation loop completely sustainable. We have been trying out several pilots in this regard, and hopefully we will demonstrate on certain routes or certain sectors the fact that we are using green electricity to run electric trucks and have a platform which is AI-based, which can keep track of the whole thing and ensure efficiency optimization. So by doing this, I think we will, in India, show the way to the world. Because we are blessed with a lot of huge resources when it comes to renewables. We also have a very large transportation requirement. Now the challenge is to integrate these two. This will require a lot of processes. Unfortunately, also requires a lot of engineering. It's a hard job. It's not easy to do. We are not blessed with the advantage of digital, where the power is, the amount of power you're handling is less. Here we're talking of hundreds and thousands of megawatt of electricity. And this requires physical infrastructure to enable that. And if you're able to kind of get that loop going, we have done it in some cases in some pilot studies. We have discovered some new challenges, because how much ever gyan we have, the reality comes out only when we do it practically. And we are on the way, and we believe that next year we will demonstrate a completely 100% sustainable loop using green electricity with green transportation and leveraging the whole digitization piece, which is, of course, will include AI by default. So that's the perception at this stage. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Pillai, tied up to what both of them said, there's a term called greenwashing. And you're, of course, somebody who is advising companies also in terms of how they can achieve their ESG goals. How do you think companies are able to, in your experience, strike a balance between profitability and sustainability?
See, sustainability, if you see sustainability as a separate box and you want to do it as, an activity, then, it is a struggle to do that. But if you include that into your business as usual operations, if you bring, the risk assessment of sustainability as part of our overall sustainability of the business, then it is not such a difficult aspect. I think Mr. Sethi has already mentioned that, if you save on reducing waste, if you save on energy efficiency, if you save on water consumption, you are not going to make loss. You are definitely going to make profit. But these are not short-term things. Initially there is a capital expense, capex upfront. You have to invest to get into sustainability, whether you have to move to renewables or to any other greener mode, you have to invest. But if you are looking at your business in a longer term, and as we were discussing, sustainability like digitization, it is going to happen. And everything that is going around us, if you look at the global pressure, the consumer market, the investment market, everybody is going to make you, adapt to ESG requirement. The faster you adapt it, the better you are aligned for the future. So when you are thinking of your business, you have to think long term. And in long term, you will find that renewables are definitely part of your business. Recycling is definitely part of your business. Having good social inclusion in your system is part of the business. So, whenever I advise, I will always ask them to look for, longer term, and all the investment that you are putting is actually going to come back in good profits only.
Right. In fact, we just have time for some closing comments. So, Mr. Sethi, first, how big is the role of authentic ESG practices, according to you? I mean, from Pernod Ricard India's experience.
It's very important. You need to be very clear and transparent, both in setting the initiatives that we have set out. So all our objectives, which are as per the ESG, they're all in the public domain. They are as per the SDG. They've been reported in terms of what we want to achieve. So we are very vocal in communicating what we want to achieve. And then the outcomes of that, right? So we need to be as transparent how we are tracking against them. The second part is also around, I would say, is the engagement of our stakeholders. That's equally important, especially coming to the customers, the consumers. Some of the initiatives like One for the Planet that we undertook, which was removing the monocottons out of our products, which was a bold move. Huge impact on sustainability, landfill elimination, which required a lot of advocacy and transparency with the end user, which was the consumer customer. It's a lot of engagement. And we were very upfront and transparent in terms of why we are doing this. And we were surprised the amount of support that we got, not only from the regulators, but also from the customers and consumers in terms of they willing to do that. And in fact, showcasing when they were doing it, that they were actually removing an adjacent carton and putting it into the bin for recycling. So I think transparent reporting, being very clear, and then also driving the alignment with the business objectives. So in Pernod Ricard, ESG objectives are part of the business objectives. So there's a cascade of ESG goals which happens till from the top of the board to down to the front line. So that's another proof that it is as open and transparent as it can be.
Right. We have very less time, but Mr. Wajid, I would want your point of view on this as well, briefly, if you can.
Yeah, unlike Gagan, who has to sort of push together business and sustainability objectives, we have a luxury. Sustainability is our business. And we are trying to align the profit with the sustainability, not the other way around.
The other way around.
So we have the luxury of doing that. So hopefully we'll do a good job.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that very engaging first session that we had on day 2 of NDTV World Summit.
Thank you, Tanima, and thank you, our guests, for that very informative discussion. Before we start our next session, I would once again like to thank our wonderful sponsors. The NDTV World Summit is co-presented by Adani. It is powered by Pernod Ricard, co-powered by GE Aerospace, supercharged by Charge Zone, knowledge partner Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, e-mobility partner Billionaire, community empowerment partner Kamla Ankibai Ghamandiram Govani Trust, associate partner FedEx, beverage partner La Cafe, associate partner M3M Foundation, insurance partner LIC, influencer partner Who's That 360, print partner Hindustan Times, and state partners UP government, Uttarakhand government, and Chhattisgarh government.
Well, now moving on, the India Century promises to have a generous dose of art being globally celebrated. And with us are some of the brightest stars from the Cannes Film Festival.
Well, we can't wait to see how they paint the future of Indian cinema on the global canvas. Now we'd like to invite Anasuya Sen Gupta, Chidananda S. Naik, and Mansi Maheshwari, who will be in conversation with NDTV's Mario Shakil.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. It is our great pleasure to welcome you to today's session, Art is Global, the India Moment. We are honored to host 3 visionary talents who have made India proud on the global stage. Firstly, congratulate us. In fact, we should start congratulating the talented Anasuya Sen Gupta, who mesmerized audiences worldwide with her captivating performance, earning her the prestigious Best Actress Award at Cannes. Next, we celebrate Mansi Maheshwari, whose thought-provoking film, Bunnyhood, captured the essence of innovation, securing the esteemed Last in F award. Welcome, Mansi. And we applaud now Chidanand Nayak, whose creative genius has been bright enough, earning him the coveted Lace Enough first prize. Let's celebrate together India's moment in the global art landscape. Thank you so much. Thank you, and welcome to NDTV. Anasuya, you know, it is often said that this is the power of storytelling. The storytelling which ensures that the characters unite, and then they take India moment to the world. What was it like winning and walking that carpet, the red carpet, when you were announced as the winner?
I mean, really beyond anything I had ever anticipated, to be honest, and a moment of deep, deep pride to be on a global stage alongside like extremely talented people from the fraternity as well. It was a fabulous year for our country at Cannes, I believe, with amazing films and projects which all of us have worked long and hard to mount with so much dedication and perseverance. So it was a moment, you know, it felt like it finally bearing fruit, so to say. And
coming after how many years?
The Grand Prix came after 30 years, or the first ever.
Yes.
Yeah, and the best actress, I believe, the first time ever.
Yes.
So amazing, really. Thank you so much.
And before I move, Anasuya, I want to understand also from you, you know, this is the India story, the Indian arts on the global stage, and it's very different from mainstream. What is being seen as mainstream? So many would say mainstream is stereotyped. Now it is Anasuya Sen-Gupta who's mainstream.
You know, so I personally do think that we are moving steadily to a time where a lot of these divisions are blurring.
Yes.
And it's a great time to thrive in the sense that, see, art is art, cinema is cinema, and there, I believe, is room for all kinds of it. There is the mainstream, there is the non-mainstream, but everything is kind of coming closer together. And yeah, to take it to a global stage, to take independent cinema from India to a stage like that was a moment of deep, deep pride, because it is difficult to get some of these projects to take off and do well, and it's really just dedication.
Yes, so Mansi, you know, this is also about India's soft power, what we call cultural diplomacy. And all of you have scripted that and continue to script it. Tell us about yourself. Bunnyhood.
Sorry, I'm laughing. Because the Bunnyhood is a story about me and my mother, and she's about to arrive soon, and she hasn't yet, so I can speak a bit freely. Well, I think Bunnyhood came from just there's so much misinformation, misconception, miscommunication in the world, and it made me just question why we lie so much. And then I just had some introspective moment and found this story in my life. Bunnyhood is a story about learning to lie and why we tell lies in life.
So how many lies have you said in the last 24 hours? And have you learned to lie?
I think when you experience this, then you actually try to become more honest in life.
Yeah.
So it's a whole journey. You learn to lie to get by in the society, and then you actually realize that you don't need to do it.
Yeah.
So this was the journey.
Tell us about the red carpet moment.
It was really incredible. Chida was obviously there with me. And because I went to NIFT before, so I was wearing my friend's dress. And it was super special. We all became friends really quickly. We were 18 directors, so it was just walking a red carpet with your friends. It was really sweet.
And what was it like, Chida, for you? And particularly when you hear that, it is about India. We keep talking about it because India and Indian history, culture, heritage is very deep-rooted. So for us to win awards, maybe it's coming late, but it was long overdue.
Yeah, and like a single kind of a film or a cinema can't represent India. India is a country of diversity.
Absolutely.
So in the mainstream also, the diverse group of films is put on the global platform. And very happy that a film like mine, which is originally in Kannada, gets resonated in a global language who even doesn't know the language. So that's a huge
So let's
thing.
celebrate that, ladies and gentlemen. I think that calls for a big clap.
So that's the way I think where we'll be going forward now onwards.
So, Jida, women have more options in dressing up for the red carpet, sari, lehenga, or lots. What about you? What did you choose to wear?
Well, we had rules. So there are certain rules which you can carry, and boys have like a blue, navy blue, or a black tux. So I was quite excited to watch a film and quite nervous walking.
So, working across cultural boundaries, I'm sure these are thoughts that come to your mind often, that how you have transcended that, ensured that these cultural boundaries do not, exist anymore. Particularly, as you said, that, regional cinema is being celebrated, not just in independent cinema, but also in mainstream cinema. And we have seen that regional cinema today represents the Indian cinema more than Bollywood does.
Like time and again, like within the few years, we are seeing that linguistic is no more a barrier.
Yes.
Like you can see a Telugu film or a Kannada film reaching across the India, even to the world. So I don't think right now we are in that, it is no more a barrier for us. So right now we'll be focusing on to tell more stories at even a more, in a bigger platform. I think it's a high time that we focus on making those films.
So when you say bigger platform, what will it be? I mean, how will it be bigger than Cannes or say La Cinef?
No, I mean, I think the more diverse approach that Chidanand is also saying that, I mean, there are big platforms are many, and there's even seeing films, the kind of films that are being discussed for the Academy. There was a Malayalam language film in the talking, and so it's a matter of great pride to see, because Indian cinema does transcend just Bollywood. It's so much more than that. So I think it's about time, and it's happening to see films from all over the country being pushed to these bigger and bigger platforms.
And there's a lot of cross-cultural collaborations at work as well. So are you looking at any of those, Mansi? And anything that really stands out for you?
At the moment, because I also write my films, so it's pretty much me, but all my team, because I've studied internationally, all my team is from different places around the globe. So there's loads of perspectives that come in. This is the reason why my film was in English. Firstly, because we also speak it. I'm speaking it right now. So I thought it was okay to do that. And also my friends that I made there, and I thought it would reach more people easily. And the people who were working on it could understand it better. So that even if they're not part of the story or directly bringing their culture in some ways through sound, music, I don't know, producing, the film is from everywhere.
Yes, and that would be the example of the ultimate cross-culture collaboration, because if you have a team which is almost global in nature, so how many countries are there being represented in your team alone?
I'm not even sure, but definitely there's people from South America, loads of people from Europe, from Africa, India, obviously. So we've touched many continents.
Oh, how awesome is that? So, Chidanand, we have often talked about how there's need to preserve Indian cultural heritage because you're representatives of India. You're ambassadors, cultural ambassadors, art ambassadors on the global stage. So, is there always this sense, something that's lurking behind your mind that you should always have that cultural identity while you're talking about to a global audience, perhaps?
I think it depends on each individuals. For me, I can say for myself, where my own identity, who I am, so how I grow up, and it is already culturally very much interlinked due to the socialism which is there right now. So I don't know, but I always look back. I can tell the stories where I come from, and I always tell the stories where I come from. So I think it is already interlinked with the cultural context, which is set within the story world. So it's quite already there.
So it's very representative of you.
Yeah, because I can tell the story where I come from.
Yes.
So my story world is which I have already seen or which I have already heard, and I have put it into a fictional world, though it's a fiction. These characters comes from the things and my interpretation of that reality.
Yes, and there's a lot of interest right now, and I'm sure the audience, the younger audience is also interested in knowing what's your education background, how can they be like you? कैसे बन सकते हैं Anasuya Sen Gupta?
I don't even know if I'm the right example because my journey has been, I didn't strategize or plan any of this, but just to put it in a nutshell, I grew up in Calcutta. I graduated in English Literature Honours from Jadavpur University. Then I decided that I want to quickly go to Mumbai and start working in films. I wanted to act, but I also had other interests and skill sets. And before I knew it, I actually I realized I now have a full career as a production designer or a set designer in films. And that went on for several years. And that's, after many, many years, is when Constantine Bojanov, the director of The Shameless, approached me to cast me in the film. And I was completely taken aback how it happened, how a dream which I thought I had left behind about 15 odd years ago was now bearing fruit. So it was quite magical for me. So what I would say to younger women and men that want to follow the dreams, it's really just that keep creating, keep persevering, and not just, in the specific art form. I found that through my own self, because I've been an artist, I've been a set designer. Now I think is my phase of being an actor to open out. So I do think it's really all about expression, and the mediums could or could not change, but we have to kind of keep our eyes on the goal, wanting to express what we believe in, our thoughts, our ideas, and there's constant opportunity to keep collaborating with wonderful people. And that for me personally has been a really big win, because with each experience, I have learned something. And eventually, I think all of those have contributed to the work that I could put in as the actress in The Shameless.
Yes. So, because we have very, very talented, I would say supremely talented actors on the stage. So now I want to understand your journeys and what next. What kind of projects do you have? Because right now we are looking at also a lot of digital collaborations. Mansi, that art is becoming digital. Everything has gone digital. AI, is AI a matter of concern for you? And how much of AI do you use in your work?
I use AI for emails because I don't want to write them. But my whole film was hand-drawn. I drew 8,000 frames, and they were all hand-painted. So it was all scanned. I didn't even use a camera to make my film. So it might be going digital, but there's still ways to do what you want to do. And for the young people, I don't think you can replicate anyone's journey. You just need to keep listening to what you can do next or what you want to do next, and whatever is easy. When I was in school, I found English and art very easy. And this is all I'm using now. I draw and I use words.
So did you actually, while you were in school, think that you'll become an actor one day? Did you aspire for it?
No. I didn't think about it at all. I think in passing, I thought maybe directing would be a good idea. But I don't know, in our country, it's a very hard choice to make when you come from, not that background.
What background? Let's talk.
My dad is a businessman. They have a family business. My brother works with him, and my mother as well.
So you don't have a film background?
Yeah.
But
So,
you became filmy.
I think I only started doing film because of lockdown. There was not much to do, and I decided to do something, and that came very naturally to me. I started putting stories on, not stories, I started creating animation and putting up on Instagram, and it wasn't for the likes. I don't think I got many. But it was just really fun, and
No, it's really incredible, how lives have changed post-lockdown. It is almost like we start describing ourselves about pre-lockdown era and post-lockdown, because we have survived a pandemic, a health emergency, unprecedented, and then we talk about your life changed during the lockdown. What changed for you, Chida?
There was a sudden change, but for me it was a gradual organic change. I never thought I will be a filmmaker at first place. So I was a cinephile and I am a MBBS graduate. So this is something very a 180-degree flip for me.
So while you were studying MBBS, you thought that you can act as well?
No, I had no thought. I was a cinephile. I basically loved watching films. I realized I like watching films because while growing up, we were not allowed to watch films in house. So we are only asked to study. And I was on that rat race of getting those ranks in CET or whatever it is. So while studying, I discovered, with the, as you said, there was a digital boom, and with the access of internet, I was getting exposure of a lot of films. So that's how it was a slow and a gradual process for me.
That's fantastic, Anasuya, there is a way in which the Indian talent is now being seen and perceived worldwide. Do you think the lens has changed?
I would say a little bit, and I think you said it earlier when we started the chat that it's a long time coming. So I couldn't be happier, and I think it feels like the rest of the world is kind of sitting up a little bit and looking at what's always been there. It's not that we've not had brilliant filmmakers and actors and actresses and all kinds of artists, but the reach in the last 20 odd years has just been increasing the way with social media, with just the access. And I do think people are taking stock of talent coming out of India a lot more now. And I think it's just us getting our dues, and I hope it happens even more now.
And is it more to do with women? Their perseverance matters.
I think so.
Yes.
I think so. And I think in the last 10 odd years, there's been a lot more women-led voices in the arts. And there's a difference. It's for us to see. There are wonderful films like Lapata Ladies.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, which is, our official entry. What a proud moment. And Payal Kapadia's win at the Grand Prix, which is an entirely, story of female friendships. And so I think it's a time for more women voices the world over anyway, and more so for our country, because we've been working on it for a long time. And I do believe that we are really here, a Mansi or a I, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, really. There have been tireless work by fantastic and brilliant women for so many, many years who have done it perhaps even without due recognition.
Yes.
And so now it's on us to kind of take it forward.
Yes, so they have cleared quite a bit of the path for you to walk, and then you have to clear even more for others who will follow you.
And for the others to run. you know.
Yeah, for you to run as well
Yeah.
now. Mansi? Yes, women storytellers, women on the world stage, Indian talent, Indian women particularly.
I think Anisha covered it pretty much. But the funny thing about my story is, in Bunnyhood, everyone thought no one recognized it was a girl. Everyone said congratulations because I was able to show a non-binary kid really well. And then I told everyone, no, it's a personal story. So I think my storytelling is more for the people in general. Whoever can relate to it, it's for everyone.
Yes. Yes. So, we have complete dominance of women on the stage today. Chida, that's the case, I would say. Now, in every sphere, when women talk, they talk. And when they stand very tall.
I think it's high time we start celebrating it, and it should be celebrated more often.
I think I left you with no choice but to say so. So let's open the floor for some questions. And if you have some questions for the incredible women here and also Chidanand, so please let's have them coming. Yes. So Gaurav, if we can move the mic there. Yes, please, ma'am.
I don't need a mic. My voice is very loud.
That's awesome.
I don't need a mic. Okay. I'm Associate Professor of History at Shahid Bhagat Singh College. My name is Charu Mittal. I wanted to find out, because Anasuya and Mansi, both of you, there is a concept of Bharatvarsh, Bharat. It is not India. What you understand is colonial India at the moment. I don't want to disturb the audience by giving a very historical talk or something, but it is very fluid. You have lots of regions coming. You have vanas, you have migrations, you have diaspora, and then along the way, there is history of diseases. It's not just the pandemic. You will have it always. Even in the future, you will have diseases. You had Dr. Kotnis ki Amar Kahani, plague, this and that, bubonic, this and that, the colonial period, in 1914, the Spanish flu, or the history of death, the history of medicine. So it's not something, yaar, ye pandemic ho gaya, ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya, excitement. And the other thing is this genderization, women, men, ye, wo. It's not like that. You have the matrikas in the Harappan civilization, you have female power, you have male power, you have the other side, the others mixing, and so on and so forth. So that's all I want to say. I think you should have I feel, I'm nobody to guide you or make it, sound like that, a very broader viewpoint than just sticking on, the set pattern of cliched ways of thinking.
Absolutely. Your thought on that?
I hear you.
She heard you. Yes, Gaurav, if the mic can be moved.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shwadang from a social media company, right? So my question to all of you, we all make movies on stories which are like success stories, right? So is there somebody looking for making pictures on the struggle of people being faced these days, and the story has not yet ended, so that with your inputs, it can come to a conclusion which is positive, right? So that's what I want to understand.
Can you repeat the question, please?
So basically, we all see movies which are based on success stories, right?
I wouldn't agree entirely, though. I mean, there are kinds and kinds of stories. But yes, that's probably a larger chunk of what we see. But there's all kinds of stories that people are writing and have written.
Yeah.
And they want to tell those stories.
Yeah.
And it's, you are right in the count that it's probably a bigger challenge to tell some of those stories, but we are all, as a fraternity, working tirelessly actually to have those stories come to the forefront. And it's really not always about the success stories. There's, would you agree?
Shida, you want to
Definitely.
Yeah, there are lots of different kinds of stories.
So do you want to add to this?
No, it's pretty much sorted because the kind of people think what the films are, they are not just success stories. There are every kind of stories which are already there. So it's just a matter of time which is coming on the forefront.
So I think it's more realistic.
I mean, even my film, if I mention,
Yes.
And the character, the protagonist that I play, there is nothing successful about her. She is a victim of terrible circumstance after circumstance, and it's a story of her trying very desperately to overcome them. And then, of course, you must see the film to know if she succeeds or not, but it's not about a success story.
Let's give it to the women, please. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hello everyone. First of all, Mansi, you are looking very beautiful, and my name is Mansi, and you are wearing this sari, and you are looking really pretty. I am a social media influencer. Basically, I am a beauty and fashion influencer. I have one question. As an influencer, we are always in like, ठीक है, जो हम बना रहे हैं, जो चीज़ हम create कर रहे हैं, sometimes we stuck in this kind of a situation कि हमें समझ में नहीं आ रहा है आगे क्या करें. जो हम कर रहे हैं वो चीज़ सही जा रही है नहीं जा रही है. क्या आप लोग के साथ भी सेम सिचुएशन समटाइम्स आती है अपनी स्टोरीज को लेके?
It's essentially your 8,000 frames that you made.
Yeah.
How it was shaping up.
First of all, congratulations on being a social media influencer. I've thought about it many times, and it's such a hard job. So very well done. And definitely we also face the same problems. I think any person who works faces the same problems where they rethink their decisions and are confused what next step to take. So it's very natural, and creative blocks happen all the time in creative fields. But I think the only thing that I do is I take a step back and I do nothing about it, and it changes.
So what do you especially do in that time? Because I think a creative block and these things happens with everyone. So what we can do that time?
Yes. I think either look for inspiration or just some mundane tasks. I think when you're bored and tired of the life apart from your work, then you will want to run back to it.
Okay, so we have 2 more questions to go. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, ma'am. I couldn't help but notice that you're such a confident orator, and it really inspires me. I think we're one of the youngest bunch here among such eminent personalities.
I noticed.
And I am a student of the University of Delhi. I just wanted to ask you, did this confidence in public speaking come naturally to you, or have you done something to, develop it? Because I want the same skills as you. Thank you so much.
You are speaking with so much of confidence.
I know, you're so
Am I? So kudos to you.
Thank you so much. I'm shaking in my boots. My heart is
but you have put up a good, even if it is that the case, so you have conquered most of it.
Thank you so much, ma'am. That's very kind.
And that's really it, like the shaking in the boots happens to more people than you'd realize. And it's just keep believing in yourself. And sometimes, as they say, you have to fake it till you make it. And there's no shame in that.
Okay, so we have the last question to
so much,
Osama.
ma'am.
Osama, please go ahead. I'm sure you don't need the mic, Osama.
Hi, this is a question for any of you. I just want to say there is a lot of conversation that is happening around cultural exchange and collaboration, etc. How can we facilitate, more cross-cultural, especially with the artists, exchange? And from what I understand, there is a lot of talent in India that is untapped. It's like a gold mine that is, waiting to be discovered. How can we facilitate that?
I think Chida should respond to that. We have a gold mine right here, so I think it has been tapped. But
the only gold mine is to let audience know them. So they have to reach lot of people, and once they discover, they know they have discovered the gold mine.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a huge round of applause for them. So thank you so much, and thank you
Very much for having us.
all of you, and wishing you lots of success. Thank you for coming to NDTV World Summit.
Well, what an honor it is to host three visionary talents. And the next lineup is even more exciting for you, Osama.
Absolutely. India's rising global influence, it has catapulted it to the diplomatic high table, reshaping international relations and redefining its position as a major player. The rapid economic expansion and growing global footprint reflects India's growing influence.
And for our next conversation, India ascends the diplomatic high table. We are pleased to have Kishore Mehbubani joining us virtually from Philippines. He will be talking to our colleague Gauri Dwivedi.
Good morning, Mr. Mehbubani.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I'm very well, and this session couldn't have been better timed. We are supposed to speak about India's century. We speak 12 hours after India-China announced not just de-escalation, but coming back to the 2020 pre-conflict status. And that, I think, is a stepping stone for the India-China relationship normalization. And I think that should be, I feel, rightfully the first question on which we start this conversation. Mr. Mehbubani, how do you read the changes that have taken place, the diplomatic resolution in terms of the India-China standoff? It took 4 years, but your thoughts on diplomatically resolving what was a big standoff between India and China?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate NDTV. You picked a very special day for the for this meeting, and you chose you knew this was coming, that a big breakthrough was coming in India-China relations. It's actually quite amazing to have this breakthrough, because the depth of suspicion between India and China was very serious. And as you know, before that incident in 2020, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Xi Jinping used to meet regularly. But now they can't meet, they haven't met for 4 years. Hopefully now they can do so. But I want to emphasize also here that I want to emphasize to you also that this is part of a larger global change that is happening in the world. We are experiencing far greater change now than we have in centuries. And since you call it the NDTV World Summit, it's important to emphasize that we have never, the amount of global changes we are seeing is unprecedented, right? We are moving into what I call a new, let me quickly describe the new world, a new 3M world. First M, multi-civilizational. We are no longer dominated by the West. The West can no longer run the world. In fact, the West is losing itself. And then secondly, it's multipolar. And there are other powers also emerging in this world. And thirdly, it's multilateral. So it's a different world. And it's in this context that you're seeing the changes between China and India. Both are adjusting to a new world that is coming in a positive way.
Indeed. And you mentioned multipolar, you mentioned multilateral. Again, these efforts towards normalization happen on the eve of a very significant multilateral framework, the BRICS framework. As someone who's studied China very closely for decades, as someone who understands this region very closely, I want to understand from you, sir, that does this pave the way for the next phase of India-China relationship? What would that be? And also India-China relationship in the context of the multilateral frameworks that you're mentioning, whether it's BRICS, whether it's several others. How do you see that in the context of what the two countries have managed to achieve just 12 hours back?
Well, I think certainly the most important organization that both China and India belong to is BRICS. And you can see that that this is one club that is a sunrise club. Everybody wants to join BRICS. Lots of new members. The G7, by contrast, which used to run the world, is a sunset organization. Its power and influence is diminishing. Its share of the global GNP is diminishing. When this century began, the G7 economies were much bigger than the BRICS. Now they're smaller than. So clearly, this is the one thing that is bringing China and India together. But also at the same time, I must emphasize that China's and India's rise is part of a broader Asian rise. And very few people in India would mention ASEAN, Southeast Asia, where I come from. But in the year 2000, Japan's economy was 8 times bigger than ASEAN. Now it's 1.3 times bigger. And by 2030, ASEAN is going to be bigger than Japan, which was the second largest economy when this century opened. So there are structural shifts happening in the world that we have to be cognizant of. And by the way, both China and India want to work closely with ASEAN.
Indeed.
And so it's a broader rise of Asia.
That's exactly what I was coming to. That when you mentioned that some of the newer economies are now set to become much bigger than developed economies, change the world order, how do you see that new world order? Where do you see the role of India? We're talking about India's century. How do you see India's role in that new world order? And of course, the entire region, how it's likely to be reshaped in the next couple of decades?
Well, as you know, recently I published a column in the Financial Times saying it's time for the United Kingdom to give up its seat in the permanent seat in the UN Security Council to India. And I, by the way, and that's not a frivolous point. It's a very serious point. I was ambassador to the UN for over 10 years. I know the history and background of the UN extremely well. And when the founders of the UN created the concept of the veto, they wanted to give the veto to the great powers of the day, not the great powers of yesterday, right? That's why Germany and Japan didn't get the veto in 1945. So similarly, after so many years, clearly the time has come to change the composition of the great powers of the day. And there's no question that India is already one of the greatest powers of the day. Its economy is now number 5 in the world. By the end of this decade, it will be number 3. And UK, as you know, is slipping down and will probably drop from the top 10 economies in the world. The UK, as a country, is lost. It's elected as a Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who's a joker, who was succeeded by Liz Truss, who was a joke. So clearly the UK has lost its capability of playing a role on the world stage, right?
But do you see the United Nations?
UK's place.
Do you see the United Nations actually surviving these headwinds that the world is facing? Because the one thing that most experts agree on around the world is its redundancy and it's past its due date. Do you see that UN will survive these headwinds? And it will reshape is a second factor. But do you see it surviving these headwinds?
I'm glad you said most experts. I'm really glad you used that phrase, most experts, because in the world that is changing so much, I can tell you that most Western experts are lost. And frankly, as our world is shrinking, as we become a small, interdependent global village, where we suffer from many common global challenges like COVID, like climate change, like financial stresses, we're becoming a global village. Now, you all know you can only survive in a village if you have a strong village council. And we need a strong global village council. So the need for the UN has never been greater. But why is the UN weak? The UN is weak not by accident, but by design. And the great powers, again the P5, have insisted that the Secretary General of the UN must be spineless. Now, if you pick Secretary Generals who are spineless, clearly the UN is going to be weak. But now, when the need for the UN is growing, we must persuade the great powers of the day. It's time to change your attitude towards the UN and select strong, dynamic Secretary Generals like Dr. Mashko, like Kofi Annan, and then the UN will become stronger. But believe me, there is no alternative to the UN.
Okay.
Absolutely none.
Okay. So you've given headlines. We need Secretary Generals at the UN with some spine, with some ability to speak up. But then let me ask you a question or an area which I feel very strongly about, which is that a lot of strength for nations come from their economic heft. That is at the core of being able to really sit on the high table and make global decisions. At a time when there's a lot of conversation around India being at the center of global supply chains, where do you see that journey? And in that context, do you see the Quad playing a major role? Do you see semiconductors being that big push factor, that tailwind, so to say, for us to really get into the middle of global supply chains?
Well, there's absolutely no question that India has got a magnificent opportunity to play a bigger role in global manufacturing, to play a bigger global role in supply chains, no question whatsoever. But to do so, I think it's important for the Indian economy to open up and integrate with the rest of the world. I'll give you a simple example. There's a regional free trade agreement called the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership that, as you know, India participated in the negotiations and so on and so forth. And India decided, it has a sovereign right to do so, not to join the RCEP. But the econometric studies show that India would add billions to its economy if it's integrated with East Asia. And as you know, most of the manufacturing today comes from East Asia. Japan, South Korea, China, ASEAN. They are the biggest sources for FDI, you know. And you know what's amazing? Southeast Asia, ASEAN, has received more FDI than China, Japan, South Korea, India combined. But how did Southeast Asia do that? Because it integrated into global supply chains and into the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So the opportunities for India are magnificent. And many manufacturers would love to come to India if the conditions were right. But let me add also one other point, which is a delicate point for you, I know, Gauri, that, you know, at the end of the day, if you want to join the global manufacturing supply chains, you still got to integrate to some extent with China. Many of the components still come from China. And indeed, if you want to, for example, become a major Apple phone production facility, which you can,
Mr. Mehbubani,
the components will come from China too.
On the integration with China bit, I think that is where India is fairly integrated. Even the last 4 years, when we continued to face tensions either at the border or diplomatically, our trade ties, they continued. So to that extent, I think the integration between the Indian and Chinese economies is fairly high. But I take your point about the ASEAN economy is doing well. It's also because they themselves are a very integrated system and ecosystem to that extent. Then let me ask you two questions. I asked you about the Quad as well, that will Quad really be the inflection point for changing supply chains? Because they've been tentative about it in the past, but there are now voices within the Quad members saying that we've got to take the next step. Supply chain resilience is the next logical step. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, it'd be actually very good if the Quad stepped up its involvement in economic integration. That would be a very positive development. But as you know, the Quad declares that its primary role is to help cooperate with each other in humanitarian ventures. And as you know, there's a perception, which may be right, may be wrong, that the Quad was set up to counterbalance China. And so it is perfectly natural for the Quad to move on to that area. But as you know, Japan and Australia and the United States are already integrated with East Asia. In fact, the total trade that United States, Japan, and Australia do with East Asia is much larger than the trade they do with India. But if India steps up its trade with the Quad, that's a positive development.
You are sitting in Manila, sir, a country which has been very vocal at, in terms of it's been at the receiving end of aggression, especially at the seas. But this is not the conversation we are having. The conversation is about India's aspiration in terms of this region and its role and the roadmap. To that extent, I want to ask you about the Look East policy. The last couple of months, the Prime Minister, his government have really stepped up the pedal. We've invited countries from this region. The Prime Minister has made visits, probably in some countries for the very first time, in some after 4 decades. How do you see the Look East policy that India is now embarked on with a renewed sense of urgency and commitment? Connect the dots for us in terms of its outcomes in the next couple of years, maybe a decade.
Well, I think, if I'm not mistaken, he also calls it an Act East policy now, beyond Look East. No, I think certainly I can tell you for a start, if you take Southeast Asia, where Singapore is part of, Southeast Asia has had for the last 2,000 years much closer links with India than with China. And if you look at the 9 Southeast Asian states, 9 have an Indic base. And amazingly, even in the Philippines, where I'm visiting now, when they organize an East Asian summit for the cultural performance for the leaders of, United States, China, Russia, everyone, they decide to have a scene from the Ramayana being performed in the Philippines, a Catholic country. So India's influence in Southeast Asia is very long and very deep. But as you know, there was a colonial era that separated India from Southeast Asia. We need to rebuild the traditional links. But the best way to do so is again through economic integration. It's good that ASEAN and India have a free trade agreement, but I think India needs to also integrate more with the other countries in East Asia too. And believe me, this is where the future markets are going to be. Let me give you this one statistic so you understand my point. The future economic growth, the markets are going to come from what's called the CIA countries. Now, CIA is not Central Intelligence Agency, by the way. CIA is China, India, ASEAN. Now, you add up the total population of the CIA countries, 1.4 billion, 1.4 billion, 700 million. It comes to 3.5 billion. Now, among these 3.5 billion people, in the year 2000, only 150 million people enjoyed middle-class living standards. Only 150 million out of 3.5 billion. But by 2020, the number had exploded to 1.5 billion. And by 2030, it will reach 2.5 to 3 billion. Now, never before in human history have you seen such an explosion of middle-class populations of this size and scale. Never. Here it's happening in our region. So for India to act east or look east, it is definitely going to have to integrate with this region. That's where the future growth markets are. And psychologically, therefore, I know many in India still want to look west to some extent, but the West is completely lost geopolitically and economically. And frankly, as you watch the populist parties, even domestically, the West is in trouble. That's not where the future growth is going to come. Certainly not from Europe. Certainly from the United States, yes, but not from Europe. So therefore, looking east and acting east is the future for India.
Indeed. And sir, final question as we wrap this up, which is that this This session is called India Ascents, diplomatic high table that we want to be on. And I feel we are already on. I feel strongly about it that the ascent has started. We are on that journey. There are many voices that are coming in that we need to be a main player, if not an active stakeholder, whether it's in conflicts, whether it's in economic integration around the world. In your assessment, quickly, the top 3 things that we should probably be focusing on to increase the pace of this ascent.
Well, I think there's no question, you are right, India is already at the high table. But at the same time, when Prime Minister of India demonstrated that he could visit both Russia and Ukraine, he showed that India can play a very valuable bridging role. So certainly, if India stepped up its contributions in trying to find a peaceful solution for the Ukraine problem, that would be a tremendous contribution. Similarly, India is one of the few countries that can talk to the opposing sides, talk to Israel, talk to Iran, and certainly talk to all the Arab countries. And then here too, India can make a major contribution to solving a problem that is worrying the world a great deal. And as you know, finally, at the UN, I think it's time for India to make its case more clearly why it needs to become a permanent member of the UN Security Council immediately. And frankly, nudge the UK and say, okay, you've had your day. It's time for you to move on. And if India takes UK's seat on the UN Security Council, the world will cheer because they know that India will provide a perspective that will be understood both by the West and the East and the North and the South. That's a unique bridging role that India can play.
Indeed, indeed, Mr. Mehbubani. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this session. And I agree with you on so many fronts, including the fact that we are in the Sunrise Club and not the club of the has-beens that G7 is becoming. Thank you so much for this conversation.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Gauri and Mr. Mehbubani. Moving on, India is taking a leadership role in the global fight against climate change. India's climate actions have far-reaching implications beyond its borders. The country's success in developing and implementing low-carbon technologies can serve as a model for other developing economies. And by leveraging its position on the global stage and driving climate action at home, India can achieve a sustainable economic path and solidify its role as a leader in the fight against climate change.
But what is India's role in global climate leadership, and what are the priorities for India in settling the terms for the climate agenda? Well, to find these crucial answers, we would now like to invite on stage Her Excellency Lindy Cameron, Harjeet Singh and Shishir Priyadarshi, and we are joined virtually by Eric Solheim. And to moderate the session, we would like to invite our colleague Gauri Trivedi back on stage.
I think this is probably one of the most important conversations that I feel are integral when you talk about what will be the shape and future of a new world order. Because at the end of the day, it's the challenges that need to be answered, and climate challenges, I think one can safely say, is one that knows no boundaries. It most certainly doesn't go according to GDPs and developed and developing status. It impacts every country, and which is why we need answers together. And I'm hopeful that we'll find some of those today in this August panel. A quick introduction is in order. We'll get Eric Solheim as well. He's the former Minister of Climate and Environment of Norway. He's joining us from Oslo. Excellency Lindy Cameron is here. She's British High Commissioner to India. Harjeet Singh, Global Engagement Director, Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative. And we have Mr. Shishir Priyadarshi, who's the President of the Chintan Research Foundation. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking out the time. And Eric is also with us here. Let me start by asking one thing, which I think would also set the context of why this conversation is so important, which is the fact that the speed with which we are seeing climate catastrophes happening around the world, their recurrence is now is happening at an alarming pace. Developed countries are facing extreme challenges, but that also gives an idea about the fact that if the largest countries are struggling, then the extent of impact for developing and poor countries is, I think, frankly, unimaginable, because they don't have the framework, the solutions, and response as well. So that's one question I feel that all of you should answer in terms of when you talk about climate catastrophes, their impact, their speed, how does that play into the urgency with which governments need to find a solution? Ma'am, let's start with you.
Thank you. I think you're absolutely right. I think the lived experience of climate emergencies helps people to understand why their governments need to take policy action now. And nowhere is that more evident, actually, than here in India, seeing the floods, the landslides in Kerala and in Odisha. So I think it is really helpful in driving that sense of urgency. And we know that matters not just in helping to build a global consensus for policy change, but also in helping people to invest in what they need for resilience. So we've been really proud, for example, to be a founder member, along with India, of CDRI, the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure, which is helping to ensure that best practice from India is actually delivered in the Global South to ensure that infrastructure is built in a resilient way. And we know that is really good value for money. We know that every dollar invested in resilient infrastructure pays off 4 times over. So it is important and it is really urgent. We're also really proud of what the UK government is doing. I mean, my new government takes climate change incredibly seriously. It was one of the first speeches that our new Foreign Secretary gave, highlighting the importance and the urgency of the climate and nature crisis. And we were really proud, for example, that we've literally just closed the last UK coal-fired power station on our journey to carbon-free electricity by 2030.
Okay, all right, so you want to respond, and then I get it, Mr. Priyadarshi as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with the High Commissioner that this series of disasters that we have seen, which are not only affecting developing countries but also developed countries, are serving as a wake-up call, and many countries are stepping up. But I also see a risk, and I must highlight here, that as rich countries are going to get more and more affected by climate change, which they did not imagine just a couple of years ago. They were thinking that only developing countries...
This is something that only happens to other parts of the
exactly.
world. It ain't happening here.
And most vulnerable countries who are going to be struggling with impacts, who also have very less capacity to deal with it, they did not really invested enough domestically in preparing for resilience. We have seen in Germany, we have seen in the UK, in the US. So now the challenge is going to be, and that's the risk, that they're going to start looking a lot more inwards, which means they are going to be far more cautious about the resources that they invest in the international cooperation. They're going to start using it internally. And that challenge remains. So on one hand, it serves as a wake-up call, but on the other hand, it may impact the flow of finance to developing countries.
I hate to give a comparison to that. It's reminding me of the COVID vaccines, unfortunately, that you start looking more inwards than ensuring that some of the other most affected parts also are brought into the ambit of protection. Mr. Priyadarshi, yeah.
Thank you, and a very good morning to everyone. Look, while it's true that the kind of disasters we are seeing are spread all over the world, but I think we shouldn't shy away from saying that it's impacting far more those who were historically much less responsible for the state of affairs that we are in today. We try and talk that it's fairly uniform across the globe. It's definitely not. Sure, in terms of natural disasters, it may be, but if you look at the kind of migrations that are happening within countries because of the extreme heat that is being generated, it's much more in the most vulnerable and developing countries. That's one. But the second point, again, it's like a point of caution, that while the narrative must be on sustainability, for a lot of developing countries, and I think India included very strongly in that narrative should actually become a three-pronged narrative. We fight on sustainability, but we don't at all lose our emphasis on economic growth and energy security. For a country like India, we've got to ensure that every single nook and corner of this country has reliable and affordable. I think the key word is affordable energy. We must also not forget the fact that India is aiming to be a developed country at 2047. All three must go hand in hand.
Indeed. And that's a question I'm going to come to in a bit after giving Eric a chance to come up with opening comments, which is about the trust deficit and also the fact that you can't have the same finishing line if you don't have the same starting point. And I think that's the fundamental point in terms of the trust deficit that exists on issue related to climate. But Eric, come in there on the fact that will these unfortunate incidents that are happening very regularly become a catalyst towards a more concerted action towards these climate challenges?
I agree to what everyone else in the panel said about the seriousness of the climate crisis, and I also for sure agree that we should not blame India or the developing world. Look, US emissions up to today per capita are 25 times Indian, so no one should blame India. But the game changer is not this. The game changer is something fundamentally different, and that is, for the first time in human history, it's possible to see environment action and climate action as an opportunity, not just a problem. Climate change is a huge problem, but it's also an enormous opportunity. And let me give you one example. And the Indian state of Gujarat has now set the target to 100 gigawatt of renewable energy by 2030. And in the combination of the good leadership from Prime Minister Modi at the center, the leadership from the state of Gujarat, and the engagement of Adani and Reliance and all big industrialists, I'm pretty confident that we'll reach this goal. And look, it's enormous. That is, for instance, 20 times the entire energy grid of Nigeria, which is the biggest nation in Africa. If Gujarat reaches this aim, it will put Gujarat, only the state of Gujarat, not India, but the state of Gujarat will then be the 8th biggest nation in the world when it comes to renewables. So this is big, big, big. And it's an opportunity for prosperity, for jobs, for income, for driving the state towards development. So Gujarat is not seeing climate change just as a problem, but as an enormous opportunity. And the same spirit is there with Prime Minister Modi, and is there in many other states of India, like Tamil Nadu, or with the new leadership of Andhra Pradesh, and I can mention a lot more. And the old days where the discussion was, do we want to take care of Mother Earth, or do we want to develop? That's gone. Now we can develop and take care of Mother Earth by seeing it all as an opportunity.
All right. You want to respond? You want to come in there in terms of what he's saying? Okay. Then let me come to the other bit, which I think is fundamental to being able to solve the climate puzzle, so to say, which is around the trust deficit, where I say that developing countries say historical polluters now want everybody to have the same finishing line when we didn't start at the same time. We can't be paying for sins of developed countries. That's essentially the crux of the argument, and that's where it boils down to. Ma'am, I want you to respond to how do you bridge that trust deficit before making any meaningful progress?
So I think you've got a real point. Our Foreign Secretary said in his speech that he had heard that developing countries didn't believe the system worked for them. And it's really important we recognise that. But it's also important to recognise we all live on the same planet. So ultimately, we do all live in the same world. And it's therefore important that both countries like the UK commit to the ambitious goals we've committed to, for example, net zero by 2050, decarbonise electricity by 2030. It's incredibly important we do that, to address our responsibilities. It's also important that we ensure the scale of climate finance is available to help India and other countries grow at the pace they want to, create that low-cost, low-carbon electricity that allows for the incredible ambition India has in a way that doesn't increase the risks for the planet. And I think that potential is there. There's a lot we can do as governments. We're committed to MDB reform, for example, to making sure there is more affordable finance. We're also committed to making sure that the City of London, as a centre for global finance, helps to unlock the potential of the private sector for this. And indeed, we're working here in India on technology and research to ensure that we're supporting those incredibly ambitious goals. I really do think, after 6 months in India, that India is the place where this is going to happen. It is the country that matters most for the future of the planet and for climate change, because India's ambition for development should not in any way be constrained by the responsibilities of the planet.
Indeed. I want to take both of you, your opinion on what ma'am said, in terms of the fact that developing countries need to find that fine balance in terms of funds and also shouldering some of the responsibility? How far back can you go in time when you need to look forward in terms of the climate challenges? And also, how do you find those innovative new green funding models that work both for investors and for governments?
So I'm really glad that the High Commissioner talked about both developed countries taking a lot more action back home and also finance. And we really welcome the new government as climate activists, because we have been missing the role of the UK over the last 10 years or so. We've seen a lot of backtracking. And you know, the trust deficit is because of a reason. When we see as India and other developing countries facing tremendous pressure to move away from fossil fuels, and we must, but the reality is when you have millions who don't have access to energy, you need that support. Whereas developed countries continuing to expand fossil fuels, Eric is here from Norway, and I must mention here, when you look at the global fossil fuel expansion, Australia, Canada, Norway, UK and the US put together are responsible for more than 50% of fossil fuel expansion between now and 2050. That's where the trust deficit comes from.
And they opened some of these plants in the last couple of years as well.
Exactly.
When they faced pressure. So I agree that the trust deficit is real.
And then you don't even deliver on finance. So, of course, there's a change in the government, and now in the UK, they've decided not to issue any new licenses, but hundreds of licenses being allowed over the last few years is going to cause damage for the next several decades, I would say, if you really look at the emissions coming from that extraction. So trust deficit is an absolutely real issue, because rich countries have not acted based on their historical responsibility and fair share, while they are continuing to put pressure on developing countries to do more without even providing finance and technology. So we need to solve that puzzle of really seeing that leadership, real leadership coming from developed countries based on their historical obligations and supporting developing countries to do more.
Mr. President, let me also ask you about the fact that a lot of your experience at the WTO, where some of these negotiations took place a couple of decades back, it was the same conversation. The context may be different, which was more trade and less climate, but the conversation was the same, which is around, you don't know the starting point, but the finishing line has to be the same for all nations put together. Talk to us about that experience in terms of being able to bridge some of this trust deficit, because at the end of the day, it's about negotiations and breaking that deadlock.
Thank you, Gauri. Look, this is not the first time a global issue is being discussed multilaterally. And I think the way the trade agenda was set in the 1990s has perhaps a lot of lessons for us in the way we set the climate agenda. You know, one of the biggest reasons that the trade agenda, and by the setting up of the WTO in 1995, led to a huge trade deficit was for two reasons. One is because developing countries en masse were promised huge amount of gains if they simply opened up their markets. This was the byline. Lower your tariffs and, heavens are going to open up. But the second was, very often, and this happened for the first 10 years in WTO, others kept telling you what you need to do. We know what's best for you. You follow this path. And I think that resulted in a huge deficit of trust. And I think that is something we must avoid when we are setting the climate agenda. Let me just quote two things. One, let me quote what David Cameron said yesterday. He said very clearly, 2 wrongs don't make a right. I totally agree. But that is subject to a wrong being done by me and a wrong being done by you. What about 2 wrongs being done by the same side? And that is something I think we absolutely need to avoid when we are setting the climate agenda. And trust me, the developing countries are doing far more. I quote India. India is committed to $2.5 trillion of investment between 2015 and 2030. That's huge. It probably was absolutely unthinkable many years ago. But yes, we do need to be met halfway. And the reason, Gauri, is, and I probably would give this example in WTO, and with the permission, give it here. We are prepared to drive down the highway towards zero emission. Absolutely with you. But we are going to do it at our speed. You do not tell us the speed at which we drive down that highway, and you don't tell us these are your restricted number of pit stops that you can do. We will get there, exactly. The starting point is there, and the goal we will reach. But yes, give us the flexibility because of very, very different conditions and support. But I'm certain if you look at the path in the last 15 years, it's towards much more trust. So I hope that that deficit will soon be a thing of the forgotten past. Thank you.
Great. Eric, let me also then ask you on this fact. We mentioned about developed countries, the fact that they're still looking at ways of revisiting some of the older mechanisms in terms of fossil fuel for powering the energy needs at a time when there is global conversation around pressurizing or asking developing nations to do their bit. Come in on that. We've mentioned some of those factors here.
I mean, absolutely. But the change on climate will not come from the multilateral system. And as you said in your conversation with Kishore Mahbubani earlier today, the United Nations is so weak and basically nothing of substance is happening in the climate talks. What will change is the action which particularly developing nations are taking for their own interest. Look, China is now 60% of all green developments on planet Earth. Solar, wind, hydropower, electric cars, electric batteries, high-speed rail, metro, whatever you can mention, tree planting, China is 60% of the global development, one nation alone. Move on to Indonesia. Indonesia has brought deforestation down to zero in the second biggest rainforest nation in the world. Fantastic development. And then, which is the topic of today, I was in Ahmedabad very recently with Prime Minister Modi and listened to his speech. He spoke for 1 hour. He only spoke about the opportunities for India in the green transformation, how India can capture jobs and prosperity by going green. Look, if India replaces oil and gas with solar and wind, the sun is Indian, the wind is Indian, well, it saves money. It saves money which can be used for education and health. And today, solar and wind energy is cheaper than fossil fuels. In the past, of course, if you wanted to go renewable, it was a cost because coal was much cheaper. But that was the past. Now, solar and wind is the cheapest energy. You save money if you turn to the renewables. And that's why India and China and Indonesia and Brazil and so many other developing nations are now in the lead. 10 years ago, if anyone asked me, where should you go to see climate action? I would say, please go to Brussels, please go to Berlin, and to Paris. If you ask the same question today, I would say, please go to Beijing, please go to Delhi, and please go to Jakarta. And by the way, this is also why this agreement now between India and China is so important, because these are the two drivers of climate action and environment actions in the world. They can work more closely together, trade and create jobs by mutual investment.
Absolutely.
That will be a major driver of the green transformation.
Absolutely. So when you talk about climate action plan, we are here in New Delhi, and that could be the starter. Then the question that comes is Global South essentially going to provide those solutions? Eric mentioned solar. And that is not just the cheapest, safest, and most easily replicable model of being able to provide basic energy needs. The larger question is Global South essentially going to lead the way for finding climate solutions? Is that now going to be the fact that has to drive global negotiations? There's COP around the corner that's going to happen next month in Baku. Is it time to let Global South do that bit now?
So I have to say, I think India is going to lead the world in this. I think India has the scale, the innovation, the technology, but also the need. That aspiration to get to developed India by 2047 requires that real level of ambition to match that pace and scale. But also India has the ability then to create a generation of low-cost technology, which actually very few other countries have got the ability to do, and then to export that technology for the benefit of countries in the global south. So I am looking forward to decades of Indian leadership in this space, which I think is incredibly exciting and something we're really proud to be working on. We're proud to be a a founder member again of the International Solar Alliance, which I think is a fantastic opportunity to drive the ability to take solar to scale at low cost in a way that has massive opportunity for other countries. And I think part of it is just it's a different challenge. Decarbonizing your economy is one thing, but actually working out how you get low cost, low carbon growth is a different and in many ways more exciting opportunity. So I think there's an opportunity there not just for governments, but also for the private sector. This is an area where I expect to see not only private flows, but also, frankly, private profits as a result of them. And that's a really good thing.
In fact, and that brings me to the part which is around technology. I don't consider myself to be someone who understands cutting-edge technology, but from a layman point of view, and I speak for most people here in the audience, barring my boss, of course, which is that technology could find solutions that could really break this puzzle about climate funding. Because, if you look at the numbers in terms of funding, last year's climate finance, the number was about 100 billion, about 110 billion dollars. Hurricane Helen alone, the damage is 160 billion. So you cannot solve this by just garnering more funding. It's not going to come. Technology needs to find those solutions for us. How do you go about addressing that, and how do you break that aspect?
Yeah, so before I come to that, very briefly, let me add to what the High Commissioner said. Totally, developing countries, as you asked, provide huge opportunities. Also because a lot of infrastructure is yet to be built. And we don't need to repeat the same mistakes that developed countries have, so we can make sure that all our sectors are decarbonized in a manner that we don't really create the same system that got created in the last 150 years. Now, and again, as you said, the role of finance and technology is going to be extremely important. But when we talk about technology, I would argue that most of the technology is already there when we talk about solar and wind, and that's what Eric was also underlining. So we don't have to invest a lot in now finding new technologies. Yes, in certain cases, like steel industry and cement and aluminum,
exactly, yeah.
hydrogen,
that's where you need it. Yeah.
That's where it's at a nascent stage, and battery storage, there are areas where we have to invest. But I think we can massively scale up the current technology. So I would argue that we need more finance right now for the existing technology, and also ensure that that production is happening locally, and that's where the role of WTO and trade comes in. That should not become a barrier. Why only India and China who should lead? I would say production should happen in Kenya's and Malawis and Nepal's of the world as well. If we need to look at climate emergency as an emergency. It's a crisis. Right? We should not just look at making money. There are other sectors where we can make money. We should make climate technology as a public good if we really want to deal with the existential crisis that we are facing right now. So I think technology is still becoming a barrier, even with the ones that we have really cracked the code of, particularly solar, wind, and even battery storage.
Mr. Pradesh, you want to comment on that in terms of both the technology aspect and the fact that some of what we already have can be replicated with India leading the way?
Look, I think India is already showing the way. And again, it's not because the three of us sitting on the panel are saying, so you look at the figures. Look what India has done in the last 10 years. And you also asked about what the Global South is doing. India added about 200 gigawatts of additional capacity in the last 10 years, out of which more than 150, that's 75% of the additional capacity came from renewables. So we added about 175 gigawatts of additional renewable capacity. And this we did because, yes, continuously technology, more adaptive, more reasonable, more replicable is coming in. But still somewhere, Gauri, and perhaps, depending on time available, I have to quote that, we also need to change the global narrative about what the Global South is doing. Irrespective what India has done. And I'll with your permission, and that's why I'm delighted that NDTV is now also doing a global channel, because we need to get the story out. I'll just quote two headlines, one most recent. This was published by The Telegraph, 2024, which is this year. It says, international leaders express dissatisfaction with India's voting patterns concerning climate initiatives. Now, for me, that's terrible. Look what we are doing, and yet what is being highlighted is our voting patterns. And if you look at the NGO report of just a year back, it says an NGO published finding criticized the gap between India's environmental promises and its action in transitioning to green resources? Come on, you've got to give me a break. The Adani Group itself by 2030 would have contributed 50 gigawatts to green energy. I mean, India's taken actually quantum steps. But yes, we really need to highlight that. We need ambassadors like Eric there. We need the high commissioners there. We need activists here. But we need, most importantly, global news channels like NDTV pushing the story. Thanks.
Yes, indeed, sir. And let me, Eric, then come in there that at the end of the day, it also comes down to the global narrative. As Mr. Priyadarshi also pointed out, that developing countries like India, at the forefront of being able to deal the issues apart from the challenges that they are dealing with around growth, around funding, still they are at the forefront of being able to at least address those. Despite that, look at the narrative that is shaping it. How do we go about fixing that?
Look, Shishir is of course absolutely right. I mean, the arrogance of the West is unbelievable. Unbelievable arrogance where people believe that Europe is leading or America is leading when India is far ahead. I mean, look, there is a poster by Adani there. Just at Kavda in Gujarat, the Adani Group will now establish the largest combined solar and wind facility in the entire world. Is 30 gigawatt. It's as much as all hydropower in my nation, Norway, combined, and we have 100% fueled by hydropower. At Omkareshwar in Madhya Pradesh, we have the largest floating solar anywhere in the world. The state of Telangana has increased its tree cover by 7%. Result. And I can go on and go on. Simply, but this India story is not told. At least not to an extent where people really understand it or grasp it in the United States and Europe. So together, this panel and NDTV and others, let's tell the India story more and better so that people in the West can get out of this absolutely horrendous arrogance.
All right, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking out the time and joining a conversation which I think matters to the present and the future generations, something that I'm hopeful of we'll be able to find solutions to and at least get that on that roadmap which is most needed. The solutions are what we need, issues we know, challenges we know. I think it's about finding those next steps and global leadership, which is what the whole point is. Thank you so much, all of you, and thank you to the audience.
Well, we'd like to thank our distinguished dignitaries and our esteemed guests for joining us over the last panel. But India's startup ecosystem has emerged as a powerhouse of innovation, transforming the country into a hub of entrepreneurial activity.
Well, Indian startups, they're tackling real-life challenges like logistic inefficiencies and lack of financial literacy. These new age disruptors, they are revolutionizing the way we live, we work and play. We are talking about the rise of Indian startups. We would like to invite on stage Lalit Keshre and our colleague Tamanna Inandar.
So we're speaking today with Lalit Keshre. He's co-founder and CEO of Grow. And for those of you who don't know or are living under the rock, Grow is one of the fastest growing platforms for financial inclusion, for trading, giving quite a bit of challenge to other big players out there. Lalit, we're very excited to speak with you at the NDTV World Summit because in this conversation, we not only get an opportunity to capture what disruptive technology can do, but talk about, I think, the biggest talking point in living rooms right now, which is, aaj market mein kya ho raha hai?
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting. Do you want me to answer that question? Market mein kya ho raha hai?
Before we start, do people randomly come up to you and ask you, quick tip hai kya? Kya stock kharide? Because you run Grow?
People used to a lot, but then they got just so bored of our answers that now they have stopped asking those questions.
Okay, let's start with the story of Grow. Tell us, of course, you started in 2016. That was a time, markets have been in a bull run for a while, undoubtedly, but that was a time when I think online trading had not become as prevalent perhaps as today. What was the idea behind it, the thought process?
Got it. So we were working with Flipkart, and personally I started investing like when I was in second year of my college here in Bombay around 2000, 2001, right? So was really passionate about investing and found a good set of folks, three awesome co-founders, all were passionate about financial services and so on. And we saw that we were also lucky to see how e-commerce grew in India, right? Everything becoming online and so on. And then we looked at the penetration of, how many people are investing in India, mutual funds, stocks, and so on. And then we saw like on Nifty 50, the constituents of financial services is like very large part of everything. And in the hindsight, if I see a lot of dots connected, right? And there was this opportunity to kind of create a crazy big impact, leveraging our technology to reach out to like millions of customers, millions of people across India. So that was the starting point.
Did you expect this kind of a trajectory, or that there would be this huge quantum of Indians across, it's not just middle class Indians, everyone now has some equity exposure or the other. The boom has been immense. Did you expect that to happen, or do you think that that's something which came about in a post-COVID era? You were in the right place, right time to ride the wave.
So we were definitely lucky. And by the way, we are still like penetration-wise, we are still very, very low compared to...
Agreed. Relatively, relatively, I would say.
Yeah. So if we compare with 2016, right? Bunch of things played a very big role. Like, as you said, markets have been kind of very, very good. And then a lot of fundamental changes happened in India. And especially on the digital India side, like, Aadhaar KYC happened and UPI came and a lot of education started happening, a lot of campaign, mutual funds and all, right? So, there were some signals that, this wave, like this is a very, very kind of long-term wave and this is India's time and so on. Did we expect this much? I'm not sure, because we did not think too much like, where will be in 8 hours. I mean, of course there were plans and so on, but I think we were lucky, yeah.
Yeah, so right time, right place. Right now, there are also concerns, Lalit, about, so for example, futures and options or derivatives trading. All the regulators recently trying to clamp down a bit on the kind of retail participation. I just want to understand what is the kind of volumes you see on a platform like Grow? Have you seen a lot of interest or excitement about weekly futures and options, for example, and the impact that you see of that coming down?
You see, Grow is a kind of very broad-based platform. It has like number of products.
Sure.
We have mutual funds, stocks, and then of course derivatives. There are like 15 to 20% of our customers who do derivatives as well. And as you rightly said, like over last few years, the interest kind of is high, and regulator, as you again said, that regulator thinks about the customers, thinks about the investors, and kind of more or less aligned with our kind of thought process also, because what matters is the long term. How are people making money in the longer term and so on. And yeah, so
Will you have an impact on volumes, or do you see those customers moving somewhere else? And do you think that retail investors needed to have been protected from things like weekly options?
I think, there are certain things where customer protection is very, very important. So from that perspective, I think we are in the right direction. Your first question about will it impact? Of course it will impact, but how much, what will be the degree? I mean, your guess would be as good as mine or anybody, because there are a lot of second order, third order effects of any rule that comes into picture and any kind of change that happens, right? So we don't know about that, but of course there would be some impact, yeah.
Give us a sense of the kind of growth we have seen in equity investment across India, and because you're at a position where you can get that expanse. It's not typically, it used to be maybe Mumbai, Gujarat, some pockets of the country where there were avid equity investors. That's not the case anymore, is it?
Yeah. So internet plus Aadhaar, UPI, like they have like lowered the kind of barriers like anything. And then folks like us came who made it very easy, very transparent, and a lot of education campaigns and so on. So earlier, as you are saying, like investing was limited to cities like Bombay, Bangalore, or some cities of Gujarat and so on, right? But now you go to any like tier 2, tier 3 town. A lot of customers today are coming from like smaller cities. Why? Because all the information arbitrage that was missing, like now it's available to everybody at their fingertips. You can open Grow app and see what is a mutual fund, what is a stock, what are the related parameters about them, what is their fundamentals, what are technicals, like anything, whatever you want is available. So that's a big fundamental change that has happened, and I think it's not like relatively new. I think the long-term trend started around that 2015-16, and again we were lucky to kind of start at the same time.
Yeah. Lalit, recently, I think you've had a big move. Our conversation and our context today is about the India century. And we have seen in the last few years, a lot of startups and young companies choosing to headquarter outside India for tax reasons, etc. We are seeing right now a trend of a ghar vapsi, in a sense. And your company is one of them that has now decided to move your headquarters out of US to India. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And tell us why.
You see, India, Grow is an Indian company. Customers are in India, management is in India, all operations are in India. So it did not make sense to kind of be outside India. We had to go, we were a YC company, so we had to register in the US. But now there is no reason why we should not be in India.
You had to pay more taxes to come back, though.
Yeah, I think in long term that's a price you pay. But in long term, I think it would be very good for us.
It's also paving the way to tap the equity markets. You're setting up for an IPO by coming back.
Maybe in some time, yeah. But yeah.
It's on the cards.
It's somewhere down the line, but we don't know when.
Okay. I'm trying to fish a headline out of you, Lalit, which you're attempting to avoid. But nevertheless, I'll go with somewhere down the line. So yes, the Indian equity investor is the center of all attention. IPOs are making, a huge inroad to investors, mutual funds as well. What do you think is the next big phase of growth? Will it continue to be mutual funds? Will it be IPOs? And will this confidence of investors sustain? Because we've seen in the cycle of equity markets in India that a bull run comes, one bad phase, and investors flee. Yeah. This time, do you think the things are different?
See, again, very hard to predict the future. We will come to know. On the next products, I think mutual fund is the most beautiful product for retail investors, at least, right? And then there's a lot of innovation that is going to happen there as well. Penetration is still very low. Like we compare ourselves with, let's say, 2016 or 2020 and so on. But if we compare with other countries, then it's still like very low. Like people are still kind of not beating inflation. Right, and retirement problem is still not solved, and so on. So there's like still long way to go, and I don't know whether there will be new products or not. But with existing products itself, I think there's kind of a lot of penetration. And that's where like companies like fintech, where the cost of serving customer is very low because of tech and everything, right? Where you can penetrate into kind of deeper sections of the country. Right, that's the big kind of innovation that is going to happen.
Yeah, but you're also in a very competitive space because the moat is low, right? Because the digital infrastructure exists. You have a fair number of platforms that make it very easy for you to invest at a click of a button on your phone while you're traveling. How does Grow aim to remain head and shoulders above or have a competitive edge?
See, the biggest thing about financial services is trust, right? You're compounding trust. And I mean, if you continue serving customer really well, if you continue kind of being on the side of the customer all the time and keep compounding that trust, I think that's the brand that you create over like if you look at all the financial services, large companies in India, why do we kind of go to them? Because they are trustworthy and they have very, very good service and so on, right? So, and it's very hard to do that, like continuously understanding customers' need. Like there is a saying in our product world where, customer need is always ahead of you and you are just running to kind of meet it. And my strong belief is that if you continue doing that, and other thing is like there's a big playground here. Like India is a big playground right now. Like India growth story is like multi-decade story is what like you have to believe, right? And and continue kind of building for the customer.
So what is the next big exciting announcement we're going to be hearing from Grow, or the next innovation that you're working on, Lalit?
See, I mean, I would be very happy to tell if we kind of work that way. But so the way we work is like we work on bunch of things, right? There are a lot of customer feedback that we keep getting. So we go out and meet customers. Like I personally travel across the country, meet like customers in all the cities and so on. And then we invite customers and we come with like hundreds of ideas from those, and then we kind of keep churning them. So it's like more like an innovation factory than one big idea that I can announce here and tell this is going to happen. So it's kind of very boring under the hood, but then what comes out is like much more exciting for customers.
I think talking about customer feedback, is the daily volume of people complaining that their tech is glitching or their app is glitching, is that your biggest pain point? And not just for you, I think across the industry. Because every once in a while you see this Twitter trend or this X trend coming in. XYZ company glitch, my trade got stuck, I lost so much money, please refund. Is that a big problem that still needs to be sorted, even as 99% of the time, things are working smoothly?
I think more important than is the customer love that we get every day. Like, of course, like when you're building something very kind of, tech-based and very high scale, there would be anomalies. But I think what gives us energy is the kind of positive feedback we keep getting every day. So it's unfortunate that all the negative things are pointed like much more, but like, I get like hundreds of emails per day, build this or this is very good and you should get this feature done. And customers are also very vocal. One beauty about building a product where customers care about you is like they are very vocal about what they want. So in general, in consumer product, it's very difficult to find what customers want, right? You will have to use various tools, but in our business, at least, that is like very, very, so we are grateful to customers in kind of, talking about all the things that they want on the platform.
But is the biggest area to work on for the industry as a whole on smoother transactions and more tech-enabled transactions? What is the next leg?
There's a lot of investment that is needed. See, infrastructure is very complicated. So like we have almost like 400 engineers working on just that, kind of getting things like very perfect, because it's about customers' hard-earned money. And that's like the promise, like reliability becomes the number one kind of item in your roadmap all the time, right? And rest everything is secondary.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lalit. This is truly an example of innovation driving a business that is growing, a hallmark of a growing India. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now in an era that celebrates the remarkable progress made by women. And Parmeshwar, we have statistics to back this claim. 13% of Indian startups, they're founded by women. There is a 25% increase in women entrepreneurs in just 2022. There are 30% of women in STEM fields. What we want to say is that women are reshaping India's industrial landscape, driving growth, innovation, and sustainability.
And today, we have a panel full of these trailblazing women. May I please invite on stage now Kami Vishwanathan, Padmaja Ruparel, Preeti Bajaj, with our moderator Suchetna Ray. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining me here. Hello and welcome. As we proceed with the NDTV World Summit, we've already touched upon India's economic growth ambitions for the next few years. And as India races towards becoming a $5 trillion economy, we now discuss the role of women shaping this future in India. From business and entrepreneurship to politics, education, and social leadership, Indian women are at the forefront, breaking barriers and setting new benchmarks. In this session, we explore how the Indian businesswoman is fostering the future, creating new paradigms of leadership, innovation, inclusivity, and progress in a rapidly evolving global landscape. And to highlight this and the role that women are playing in the nation's growth and transformation, I have with me a very powerful panel. I have with me Kami Vishwanath. She's the President, Middle East, Indian Subcontinent and Africa for FedEx. Preeti Bajaj, CEO and MD, Luminous Power Technologies. And Padmaja Ruparel, she's the co-founder, IAN Group. Thank you, all of you, for joining me. It's extremely coincidental that all three of you actually are part of sectors which are essentially being male-dominated. So I'll start with Kami, with you first. Logistics, again, traditionally male-dominated. So what are the glass ceilings that are yet to be broken?
Thanks, Suchetna. I think there is a lot more work to be done, so let me start by saying that. FedEx, as a global corporation that works across multiple international markets, I think we recognize the power of building a global culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And 36% of our board is women. We have 26% women across management globally. Our DEI Council sets priorities and tracks progress against those, so our approach is quite structured. And we recently added opportunity to diversity, equity, and inclusion to rededicate ourselves to inclusive hiring and promotions and supporting career paths. I think the biggest work we have in front of us is how do we increase the representation of women in the logistics and supply chain sector? And I think that starts at the top of the funnel with increasing the number of women candidates that apply for positions in this sector. And that includes changing preconceptions and biases. The other big area of focus as we see it is middle management, where we see typically a drop-off in women's participation due to added responsibilities and societal expectations around childcare, elder care, and so forth. FedEx is a very people-centric culture, and a lot of our efforts around DEI have been around how do we build a culture where DEI thrives. So inclusive leadership training, for example, where we work with managers on how do you manage diverse teams. And we have senior leaders talking quarterly to our teams about how can you be intentional about inclusion. And we have a program called Walk in Someone Else's Shoes that helps build empathy for people of different diverse backgrounds and so forth. I think there is a lot more to be done. It's an ongoing journey for us. And we're always striving to do better, particularly around how do we bring in more women into the sector, how do we ensure the right career pathways with the right supportive policies, and how do you increase the proportion of women in senior management, which is ultimately, I think, the biggest challenge.
Very important points you're making, Kami, because data shows us that while you have women in middle management, participation reduces significantly as they move up the ladder. I'll take the same question to Preeti. Globally, energy as a sector has very few women. Energy technology, you see fewer. So what are your initiatives to take the tribe along, so to say, as you see more women participate in senior management?
Yeah, I'm very delighted to say that at least at Luminous Power Technologies, the senior leadership team constitutes 33% women. So out of a 12-people leadership team, we have 3 women at the table really making a difference all day, every day. However, the way I look at it is multidimensional. I'll describe it in 3 A's. The work that needs to be done in the energy sector is, the first A is access. Equity of access to opportunities. That's super critical, and that's really about the same sort of thing that Kamini was talking about. Top of the funnel, making sure that you're intentional about the caliber of women and they're getting equal representations on recruitment lists, and that we are able to address the biases sometimes that come in. The second bit is ambition. This is a two-way street, in my opinion. Women have to aspire to field roles to get to senior leadership roles. Even as I sit here today, we have a lot of work to do when it comes to sales and sales operations role, perhaps plant management roles. These are areas of opportunity we are intentional about. But that ambition, that desire to pioneer that is also something that the candidate or women themselves have to fuel. So equity of ambition to do that job has to come from the participant, and the company is responsible for creating the environment. The third A, in my view, is attainment. Attainment is about the environment we create of support, possible policies, and at Luminous we do that through, of course, equal policies wherever possible, safety of transportation, all those things that we can potentially address. When it comes to energy, my call to action to all the women would be, this is a revolutionary time in energy. It is also a bigger revolutionary time in India. So if you had to be really thinking about climate action, you had to think about how you're included in shaping the narrative of the future of the country. Being in the energy sector is not necessarily optional. And this time, we should make it a point to not miss the revolution. We should be part of it so that we are part of the 2047 Viksit Bharat, so to speak.
Right. Padmaj, I'll pull you into this conversation. There are more and more women entering the space of investment. But when you really started out, you were quite a lone warrior at that time. How much has the space changed? A, what are the glass ceilings that remain to be broken?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me here, and I'd like to actually take an opportunity to congratulate NDTV on the launch of their World Channel. I think it's going to be something to watch out for, so congrats. That's true. When I started life in this field, there wasn't anybody, and that was the fun of it. And sometimes I think it was a woman who could do it. There was so much adaptation, there was so much education, there was so much evolution that I went through, that I think that perhaps tinges on a woman's intuition to say, this is what I need to do. So I honestly think I can't be an investor if there are no entrepreneurs, right? I'm a startup investor, I'm an early stage investor, and I can't be an investor if there are no entrepreneurs. If we look at India's entrepreneurship, yes, it's grown, but there is a very abysmal growth of women entrepreneurs, right? And even more abysmal is the fact that funding is rare, right? Last year, or the previous year, 2022, we had 14.7% of funding that went to women. 23, it's dropped to 9.7. That is not encouraging. So I think one big thing is that women entrepreneurs are very rare. Right. If they're not going, yes, of course, there are some who've made it. I don't deny that. But majority of them are not going the whole path. And that is something where it's a clear goal for all of us, be it investors, be it a woman, be it an entrepreneur, be it anything. We need to nurture that and grow that. Otherwise, I think as a woman investor, I don't think I would have done justice to that. That's the entrepreneur part. I think the investor part, to be honest, we've seen investors sort of, women striking out and creating women-focused funds, women investors, partners. I mean, we have a few, and we are getting a few. But the interesting part, and this is also reflection of the investing landscape of India, that growth money is much, much lesser for women founders. And it also tells you that growth funds, there are not enough women partners or senior people driving that. And that is where you see a linkage where young women-led companies are not growing rapidly. Many of them are falling off the radar. So to my mind, I think the aspiration, if I had to sort of enunciate that from an investor perspective, it's very clear to me. We need to create the BlackRock of India led by a woman. Then we'll make it. That to me is what will drive the entrepreneurship. I mean, if there is money, there's no reason why entrepreneurs will not start. And if they're good entrepreneurs, there's no reason why investors will not come. So to me, that's a symbiotic thing, a relationship. And if it's driven by a woman, my hope is that we've invested in 23% of our portfolio is led by women. 90 board seats in our 230 companies are women. I think we can do much better if we had that thinking.
We'll move to another symbiotic relationship. We'll talk about India's expanding growth ambition and the role that you and your companies are playing in propelling that growth. I'll begin with Kami again. How is FedEx adapting to India's expanding economy, and how are you doing that by optimizing your supply chains?
Yeah, FedEx is a global connector, and we facilitate global trade across 220 countries. We see tremendous growth opportunity in India with the expanding economy. Global businesses are looking to set up operations and exports out of India to serve international markets. We see that particularly in areas like high-tech, electronics, and aviation. Indian large businesses are looking to go global and acquiring assets in global markets. The small and medium segment, both in terms of cross-border B2B as well as e-commerce, is growing very fast. So there is growth across the board in India, and we are investing in capacity from Asia to India and India westbound to Europe and the US, and also making investments in our hubs and gateway infrastructure in Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore, as well as the Middle East. In this current environment, supply chain resiliency is very critical for businesses, and part of building supply chain resiliency is about alternative supply sourcing and hedging supply risk. Part of it is also about having end-to-end visibility of supply chains. And that is why we have taken an approach of integrated logistics, where we offer an end-to-end solution to our customers across express, freight, air, and ocean, where our customers can work with us seamlessly without friction that they would otherwise face with multiple service providers, and also have the visibility end-to-end. And our one-stop solution platform enables our customers to manage shipments, book, track, trace, and have the visibility I spoke about. We're also leveraging data and technology, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I think our biggest focus is on how do we optimize supply chains and help manage supply chain risks for our customers.
Preeti, I'll go to you next. The energy sector globally is evolving at such a pace, and technology and sustainability seem to be playing pivotal roles there. So how is your business strategy at Luminous making sense of all of this for India?
Yes, it is a very dynamic and ever-evolving landscape. So as Luminous, we think of it in three ways. Number one is insight. We are a homegrown brand of India. We have been around the country serving in excess of 100 million consumer homes. So when it comes to insight on usage of energy storage in the home, we've learned a lot about what the Indian consumer expects when it comes to how he or she wishes to use this essential service backup and energy in the home. We bring that insight into what I would say innovation. So very quickly we were able to understand that, okay, the grid has different conditions. What is relevant in UP is not relevant in Karnataka, and what is in Karnataka is not going to work in Kanyakumari, and whatever is working in Kanyakumari is not going to work in Jammu and Kashmir. Everywhere the grid is different, the consumer expectation is different, and the energy storage requirement is different. And then it made us realize that when we think about solar solutions for Indian consumers, we have to think about it in the terms of off-grid, something that can work without the grid ever being connected, hybrid, which means the grid is connected as well as can serve as a power backup unit with solar panels and battery packs, and finally grid-tied, which is essentially where you can produce your energy and sell it back to the grid as well. And what's interesting about all this is that these dimensions, the more we travel the world, we realized are so unique to India.
Mm-hmm.
They're so unique to India.
Right.
It's not the same thing anywhere else in the world. And the third piece, what I would say, is when we think about that, Indian consumer has always been at the nexus of, I'm loving the 3 A's, so I'll start again, affordability of energy, accessibility of energy, and availability of energy.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever you create in terms of solutions, you've got to think about those 3 A's and feed it into that. So to that effect, I'm very proud to say that we build our own solar panels.
Right.
We build every part of a solar power generating system.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is making sure that there is availability, and part of it is making sure that there is affordability.
Mm-hmm.
And the last piece I'll say, I've spoken about the insight, the innovation, and I've spoken about the industrial ecosystem, if you think about it. The last piece, the fourth piece, is the Indian talent.
Right.
India has a lot of talent. And when we think about, well, we want to make in India in our 7 factories, and the 8th one is coming out of the ground, we think about how will we actually take this aspiring talent and expose it to technologies that make a difference.
Right.
So if you're sitting here today, I can share with you, and we never think about India in these terms, so please indulge me in my passion. We have been using distributed energy storage, which means batteries in the home longer than any other country in the world. But for some reason, we never recognized that. And now that we've recognized it, it's really, really critical that we are proud of it, yet making leaps and bounds to make sure that this is evident. And therefore, connectivity is super important.
Absolutely.
And that's how we think about our solutions. That's all. I will stop now.
Thanks, Preeti. Padmaja, we see a lot of startup activity in being driven by Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities of India. Do you think that entrepreneurship has truly democratized in the country?
So Chetna, this is a very interesting question, but let me answer it in a slightly different way. Of course, if you look at UPI, if you look at ONDC, if you look at India's digitization, it's natural that this is going to happen, right? Democratization is going to happen. But to me, technology is largely a tool. It's accelerated startup activity, it's accelerated business, it's accelerated and eased life, right? But the reality of it is lying somewhere else. And let me share that in 4 examples rather than giving you points, right? When you go to Tier 3, Tier 4, Tier 2 kind of cities, India, we talk about India as still developing. There are real problems that people, citizens of those towns and cities face. And those problems, they understand very well because they are local. And because they are local, they are also need a solution. So they start building a solution there and then. And that is not only democratization of startup activity, it is creating some very innovative technology-enabled solutions for real problems being bred in India, operationalized India, and which can go global, right? So let me give you 4 examples. There's a company called Pool, born in Kanpur, right? What was the founder worried about? He saw flowers that when we go to prayer in the temples, we give flowers, we play our obeisance. Those flowers were going into the Ganges, and he saw the Ganges
being
polluted. So he collected that flowers, and out of that flower waste created incense and personal oils and a whole lot of other things. But that's not where he stopped, okay? He created an alternate to leather, right? Guess who his mentor is? His mentor today is the founder of one of the 4 global companies. I won't give you the name, but it is one of the Meta, Amazon, Netflix, Google founders.
Wow.
So that's a product born out of waste, out of the Ganges, literally, and gone global, right? Second one, think of Kerala, tier 2, right? Company called Gen Robotics. Saw his family, somebody in his family, actually having to clean the sewers, right? Created a robot to clean sewers. It's now partnering with all the municipalities in South,
Right.
gradually scaling up. Real problem, life is messed up for those sewer cleaners. He's created a solution,
Right.
right? Third, there was the COVID. Pandemic happened. We have phenomenal engineers in this country. Born in Kanpur, they were doing robotic waterless solar panel cleaners. Pandemic came, lockdown came, company was completely stalled, and they would have died.
Right.
In 95 days, they created a smart ventilator where not only were the patients saved, but also the healthcare providers maintained their social distance, right? Which was internet enabled, it was smart, it had everything that it had. Today, that company is pushing to export to Africa, right? Again, a locally born company in a tier 2 town, born out of a need and a problem, created it in 95 days with all the approvals that were required at that time, contracted with BEL, has now got installations in tons of hospitals in this country and are pushing to go to Africa, right?
Yeah.
And the last example, outside of Udaipur, there is a whole colony of carpenters, right? Shisham wood, if you know Shisham wood, they are carpenters who are building furniture, creating furniture out of Shisham wood. They were not earning well.
Yeah.
Great craftsmanship, but could not earn. Company called Wooden Street brought them together, and today Wooden Street is selling across the country over 100 outlets and online.
Right.
Right? So born out of need, born out of real problems, entrepreneurship is not something that we can get away with. That is our DNA. And
Right.
that is what we will do. We know 200 years ago, that was our DNA. It has just come back. That's
Very
all.
inspiring stories that we hear from the tier 2, tier 3 cities. We've completely run out of time. There's so many questions I still have for you guys. I think we'll take it outside this podium. Thank you very much once again, Kami Vishwanathan, Preeti Bajaj, Padmaja Ruparel, for taking the time out on a busy Tuesday and being here. Thank you very much once again.
Well, India has witnessed an unprecedented surge in startup growth with over 100 unicorns. These Indicons, as our next guest likes to call them, are transforming India's economic landscape, driving innovation and creating opportunities.
In fact, as the ecosystem continues to evolve, these unicorns will shape India's future, solidifying its position as a global startup hub. And who better to speak about the rise of the Indicons than Kunal Bahel, who coined this term. Please welcome on stage Mr. Kunal Bahel and our dear colleague Veera Raghav.
Thank you, Parameshwar and Vedant. Well, Kunal Bahel doesn't need much of an introduction. He's a poster boy for Indian startups, and startups are perhaps the one that defines India's future, the entrepreneurial spirit. But with all that introduction, I was just having a casual chat with Kunal, and he's made me very nervous about being a competitor. He says the one thing he hasn't done and he wants to do in life is to be a newsreader. So I don't know if you're going to put all of us out of jobs. What's the plan of that?
Yeah, I think maybe AI will put the newsreaders.
We'll have
out
an
of
AI
jobs,
Kunal to get down to it. Kunal, but seriously, the topic of the conversation today is about Indicons. It's a term that you've come up with because a lot of the startup jargon is, business as we used to call it at one time, it became startups, is a very American jargon. And given the kind of presence we've had in India, perhaps time to come up with our own, jargon as well?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me here, Veera, and to the NDTV team. This is a great new forum you've set up with the NDTV World Summit. we've been celebrating unicorns for many years, but if you just trace back to understand why does this exist, why does this term exist, this term was actually invented by a venture capitalist in the US, in the context of the US, where companies over $1 billion are called a unicorn, right? Which is actually a mythical figure. And as I was reflecting on it over the years, having built a unicorn, having funded many companies which became unicorns, I just realized that why are we celebrating these when actually what our country needs right now is lasting, enduring businesses where startups are built off the back of real revenues and real profits. Right? There was a time 10 years ago, the ecosystem was too small for companies to become profitable relatively quickly. That has changed. 10 years ago, we had 100 million internet users in India or 150 million internet users in India. Now we have over 1 billion. India's income levels have gone up. We are seeing companies who want to be profitable become profitable in 3 years from the starting point. So then why is there an obsession with a currency that is not ours, right? An amount which is irrelevant in our context, like why 8,300 crores, right? Why? Because that is what $1 billion is. Why are we obsessed with 8,300 crores? Why are we obsessed with a currency that is obviously not ours? We generate revenues and profits in Indian rupees, not in dollars. And a mythical figure. If you think about it, like it doesn't make any sense. Rather, isn't it better we build businesses with the intention of making them lasting and enduring and aim for goals which enable us to get there? So 100 crore revenue business which is profitable. Because the moment a company becomes 100 crores in revenue and is profit making, it is very likely it's not going to go out of business, right? And will keep going from strength to strength. And what India probably needs right now is not 100 or 200 or 300 unicorns or 500 unicorns. We need 10,000 indicorns because that will form the bedrock of the startup ecosystem. Right. And that will create the steady flow of companies that eventually become listed companies and large businesses.
As you explain that fundamental, and it's a fascinating concept, but it's also an attitudinal expression, right? Like yesterday we had the Prime Minister here speaking about AI is not just for artificial intelligence, but aspirational India as well. When you come up with jargons and terms which are local in nature and something that's homegrown, it also reflects that aspiration.
No, absolutely. I think the Prime Minister has made an indelible contribution to the startup economy. When I started my startup journey, I was 23 years old in 2007. There was nothing known as a startup. There was no nomenclature called a startup, however strange that may seem right now. You either did a business or you did a job, right? And the business was typically the one you inherited or you joined your parents' business. There was nothing sitting in the seemingly twilight zone of this is not your family business and it is also not a job. There was no word for it. Imagine. Startup came into national parlance only around 2015 when the Startup India initiative was evangelized and launched by the Honorable Prime Minister. And because of that, startups gained legitimacy. They gained recognition. Suddenly parents in small towns were not aghast the moment their 23-year-old child who went to IIT after a lot of struggle by the parents saying, I will not join McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or Microsoft or Google and I'm going to start something and I'm going to make zero money for the next few years and likely we are going to be in debt during that period. They were no longer aghast at that. And that contribution, I think, significantly goes to the Prime Minister and obviously the role models that have now become available to the younger generation of founders.
And for instance, I was wanting to ask you, when you come up with a term like snap deal, it's again something that's inspired. You studied in the US and it's inspired by that, the American influence. Over the last, let's say 15 years, what's changed at that psychological level? I mean, is it the American influenced or American educated or one who's gone abroad, who's come back here? I come from Bangalore where you have most in the startup world speaking with an accent. Is that changing really in terms of how Indian homegrown startups are seeing themselves?
What has really changed over the last 15 years, I would say, is for until about 2017, before the 4G revolution came about, we had very few internet users in India, relatively. And it's not only the number of internet users were fewer, the usage of internet was a lot fewer in terms of per GB per user or GBs per user per month. That took off after the 4G revolution that happened around 2017. And suddenly the opportunities which were more domestic in nature exploded. You know, I always say that India has mouth-watering opportunities, but eye-watering challenges. And that is very evident in the startup economy as well. But the mouth-watering opportunities also didn't really exist as pervasively as they do now prior to 2017, because there weren't just enough connected users in our country who were using the internet enough. Because how will you digitally provide services and products if there aren't enough people to provide them to through the digital medium? And so what has happened post 2017 is increasingly, because I've been investing in companies while at my heart I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a founder, but I've also been supporting the startup ecosystem by investing my own capital along with my co-founder Rohit. And I would say pre-2017, a lot of the ideas were, Uber for India, X for India, Y for India, etc., where it was business models that were proven and they seemed like low-hanging fruit to build in India. Nothing wrong with that. However, what has changed post-2017 is a lot of domestic challenges and domestic issues have been identified by founders and turned into opportunities. And now what we see is mostly like 80% or 90%, if not 95% of the companies we meet who come pitch to us at Titan Capital for funding are solving domestic problems and going after domestic opportunities. That is so encouraging, because if you now fast forward 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you imagine the kind of companies, products and services that are going to be built by the upcoming generation of founders.
And so would you believe that it's easier to be an entrepreneur today than when you started off? Would you believe that your journey would have been faster if it was now than then?
I don't, some things change for the better, some things change for the worse. I feel that back then, the good thing was that there were fewer companies, so you could take your time to build something. But the bad thing was there weren't enough users, right? So you had to, sort of slog it out for many years. Now it's the inverse of that. The inverse is that there are lots of users, there's disposable income, which is a lot higher. However, there is insane amount of competition. There was very little financing, like venture capital available easily. Now I think in Bangalore, where your city, I think you throw a rock, it'll throw up money from the ground.
It throws back dollars. No, but when you talk
hopefully rupees.
Hopefully rupees, yes. Yeah. Not in millions, but in crores. Yeah. But when you say when you're talking about money, the one way that startups have traditionally raised money is through venture capital, right? Now, you have had a successful IPO as well. How does that change? I mean, post-IPO, how does it change your life? Do you wake up in the mornings at 9:30 and check the Sensex, whether it's red or green? Or, how does that change? And also, what's the learning for the startup, ecosystem itself in terms of raising funds?
Yeah, I think that's a great point you bring up. For the longest time, there was a lot of, I don't want to use the word disdain, but a lot of question marks about the endurance of the startup ecosystem. That is it all very transient and fleeting and opportunistic, or is it something which will be long-term, lasting, and like, are we building forever companies, right? Like a lot of the listed companies are forever companies. I think what the IPOs of and successful IPOs of many of the companies that have listed, and we've been fortunate that ours has also been received very well this year, of our software company, Unicommerce, is that it is now, the tide is turning, the tide of perception is turning, that the skepticism is turning into, maybe they are building good companies, or maybe these companies will be lasting companies. Maybe these companies are not fly-by-night operators. Maybe the founders and operators of these businesses didn't get into it just to get rich, but they actually are purpose-driven and are committed to building their companies for 5, 10, 15, 30 years, like the traditional industry promoters have been, right? So I feel the IPOs are really, really helpful in raising the bar, raising the ceiling for the upstarts, the new companies to say, where do I want to be? Because earlier, it seemed like the bar of performance was, did I become a unicorn or not? Now the bar of performance is, of hyper performance is, did I build a business which was solid enough, profitable enough, and with great governance and great culture, that it has the ability to go public.
So when you are a venture capitalist and you're looking at an investment, would that be a critical question? Look, I know that this can possibly make money in the next 3 years, but is this a resilient idea?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. When we meet companies, we are meeting them when it's just like two guys and a PowerPoint and maybe like 2 lakhs of revenue. I remember when we invested in Mamaearth, which was one of our investments, which is now goes by the corporate name of Honasa. They were doing 5 or 6 lakhs of revenue, and really smart founders, small team of 8-10, including the two co-founders Varun and Ghazal. In our head, what was going through our mind was, as it goes through when we meet other companies, in 5-6 years, can we see this becoming a public company, right? 5-6 years is too short a period of time, but to their credit, they became a public company in 7 years. But our first step, we think, is, can this become an Indicon, like 100 crores of revenue and profitable? Because then we know from there it is just projecting out a growth rate till the point they become large enough that the public markets would find them of an acceptable scale and size to come in to list.
Interesting that you make that point, and as you point that out, make that when you were answering that question, there's also the rock bottom that a startup or an entrepreneur hits through, right? In your own personal life, and not from a theoretical point of view, was there a moment when you turned around and said, but you worked with companies before you started off as an entrepreneur. Was there a moment when you said, no, look, I made the wrong choice. I shouldn't have been here. And how do you deal with that moment, and how do you get over it?
Yeah, I think any founder who says that they haven't gone through their low points is lying. Everyone from the outside thinks a successful company started here and came here and it was a straight line. It's actually a zigzag, up and down, twisty-turny journey to get to an eventual, what is perceived as success externally. We've had many, many low points. I think we may have run out of money at least 6 times over a 16, 17-year period. There have been so many near-death situations. But I think at each point, the key is to find the courage to continue. Many times you'll find yourself at the bottom of the abyss. And many people don't know what bottom of the abyss actually feels like. Bottom of the abyss feels like things are so bad, there are no answers. Any advisor, well-wisher you go to, even they can't advise you or what to do. Even they are almost hinting, chalo band kar do. Right? There's nothing you can read, no podcast you can listen to, no interview you can watch that will inspire you or give you ideas of getting out of that rut. That is what bottom of the abyss looks like, and most people have not been there. And it's at that moment where you're at the absolute bottom, finding that little bit of courage to continue is what is needed. And every time we found ourselves at the bottom of the abyss, me and Rohit and our team have found that courage to continue. And we've realized before you know, you're out of the hole. But you need to always believe in yourself that we will come out of it this time also.
And that not only makes a strong company, resilient company, but it also makes a resilient individual. And you've been inspired a lot by Mr. Tata. You were sharing as well. That kind of a message that you got, or possibly something that has changed in Kunal when you started your journey to now, what would it be?
Yeah, I think Mr. Tata has left us with an enduring legacy of contributions and wisdom. And I think, at least for me, one of the things which is very, very endearing about my few interactions with him over the last many years that I knew him from 14 when he invested in our company was, just his humility and his memory. So I'll give you an anecdote, right, which is a really interesting anecdote. When I met him for the first time in 2014, I was in his office in South Bombay, and after we had a short discussion about our business, he said, I'd really love to invest if you will have me. So his humility is always like, he didn't assume that I'm Ratan Tata. Of course, if I tell you I want to invest in your company, you will take it. Of course, I would take it, right? But he never assumed that. But as the meeting was ending, he asked me, is there any other question you have? I said, I just have one request. He said, what is the request? He said, at some point, I would love for you to come and meet our team because it will change their life, right? Like they could never imagine meeting Mr. Tata. He said, okay, I will do it. So some time passed, he got really busy with some of his internal Tata responsibilities over the next couple of years. So he was not making that many trips to Delhi. And then COVID came right after. And somewhere towards the end of COVID, probably around 2-3 years ago, I met him at a wedding. And he was sitting like this because obviously he had started, having some health issues. So I just walked up to him and I said, Mr. Tata, I'm Kunal, because I just didn't want to assume that he'll suddenly recognize me, meets thousands of people. He said, of course I remember. And by the way, I still owe you that trip. So, that was the greatness of Mr. Tata. Imagine the tens of thousands of people he would have met over the years. He still remembered the 2014 promise in passing that he made to me. And I think that just is such an enduring lesson for everyone.
Make a promise, remember it, remember to keep it. My final question, would you rewrite the Kunal story in any way? When you look back, perhaps go to IIT, would that be the one thing that you missed out?
No, I think, I feel that I'm really blessed with so much serendipity that has happened in my life, right? So many things have happened that I want, that didn't go as per plan at that point in time, but set me on a path that was better for me, right? I didn't get into IIT, but I got into a good US college, which opened my mind, really helped me blossom. So at that point in time, it feels like you have failed, right? Because that's how society will make you feel. But I think if you can, like I said earlier, come out of the bottom of that abyss, just find that little bit of courage to continue. I remember the day I didn't get into IIT, everyone was really upset in my family. I went and played 3 hours of cricket, right? And just picked up from where I left off, said, chalo, ab kuch aur karte hain. I mean, I was working at Microsoft in the US. They applied for my H-1B visa. I thought I'd live in the US for a few years, then maybe eventually come back or start a company there. They applied for my H-1B visa. One day I was sitting in my office. I got a one-line email saying, your H-1B visa has been rejected. You have to leave the country. So, and that's how I came back and started my journey as an entrepreneur. So I feel that if you keep working with hard work, sincerity, just imandari, kadi mehnat, eventually, over a period of time, success will follow you.
And that's a fascinating note to end this conversation on. Thanks so much, Kunal. And I hope to see you as a newsreader soon, hopefully on NDTV Profit. Thanks very much for sharing this conversation.
Thanks.
Thank you, Veera and Mr. Behl. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the NDTV World Summit 2024, the India Century. We have come to the end of the first session, but there is a lot more coming after a very short break, so please don't go anywhere. We will invite everyone now to join us for lunch. We'll resume in just 45 minutes from now.
It's been an exhilarating first few hours. Osama, we have a special guest lined up.
Well, absolutely. She has inspired an entire generation of pujas, or what we can say, not pujas. What do we call her? Ooh, that's right. She proudly says that मैं अपनी favorite हूँ, but I can rest assured that she's everyone's favorite, including ours. We're not going to give it away yet. So let me just invite my colleague Maria Shakil on stage to give us that introduction.
Hello everyone and welcome back after lunch. The fact is that there are very few women actors who have had 25 years. And ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for the queen of Bollywood, the icon of Indian glamour, the ultimate global Desi girl, Kareena Kapoor Khan. From Pooh's unstoppable sass To Geet's irrepressible joy they weave, Karina's characters have captured hearts worldwide. With a career spanning over 2 decades, to be specific, 25 years, Karina, she has proved to be a talent that knows no borders. As a true global Indian, Karina effortlessly rocks a lehenga or a sari on the Cannes red carpet. She slays the Instagram game, I would say, with 10 million followers, 10 plus in fact, and still manages to make us laugh, cry with her unforgettable performances. Today, we are honored to have Kareena Kapoor Khan with us to share her inspiring journey, her take on global citizenship, and perhaps some secret to her fabulousness. Get ready for a session that's equal parts fun, fierce, and fabulous, just like Kareena Kapoor Khan. And as she says, मैं अपनी favorite हूँ. Kareena, welcome. Yes. Thank you so much. And welcome to NDTV and welcome to Delhi.
Ooh, thank you. Always, I was in fact, मैं परसों ही दिल्ली में ही थी, because we had gone to Pataudi for 3-4 days. It was our anniversary. Yes. So Delhi also always feels like home, and I love coming back.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
How many years to that?
Oh God, I think almost 13 years of marriage, but it still feels like 3. I still keep it exciting.
So, you know, Kareena, you are today a global style icon, somebody who wears Indianness on the global stage. So before, we'll be dividing this conversation in 2 parts. We'll be speaking about you as a style icon and also as a supremely fantabulous actor. So let's start with the style icon part. What are the fashion sensibilities do you think you have that have actually conquered the world and which is very much Indian in nature?
Coming to Indian fashion, I think it's evolved so much, whether it's in films, whether it's on the red carpet, whether it's now with people just having access to the gram. I think people are just looking out for Indian fashion, and I'm happy that it's a great moment for the fashion industry because of its great craftsmanship, I feel. I feel the Indian heritage and their craftsmen are finally getting its due, whether it's our great Indian designers like Amit Agarwal, like Manish Malhotra. I think they're using our Indian artisans to its core, which is what is grabbing the attention on global platform. It's also Indian fashion, I think, is also, I think, हमारे जो साड़ियों की जो color है, जो रंग है, I think that is something that grabs everyone's attention when you're on the Cannes red carpet or you're at IFA or you're anywhere. I mean, if I'm on holiday and I decide to sometimes, put on a nice Indian outfit, everyone is just like, oh my God, it just grabs those eyeballs. So I think it's being true to, it's the Indian culture, the fashion, whether it's which it's bandhanis, which it's colors. So I think it's just, India's having such a great fashion moment. I mean, all our designers are, opening stores at different places all over the world. People want to, it's no more, I think, that, I mean, of course, like we wear Western clothes as well, a lot of us. It's no more that only the Indians are wearing their saris and, it's not just that. I think all over the world, everyone in every culture and every race wants to wear a beautiful colored sari, a beautiful colored lehenga. I mean, till today, like आपने जब introduce किया था, तो आपने कहा that she rocks a lehenga. I think that leja जो lehenga था, I think Manish ने इतने सारे लहंगेस बेचे उसका. That's because people have, they just took to that color, the cut, the song. So, I mean, it's always it's been having its moment, and I've been part of that, and I'm really, really lucky.
So, Kareena, lehenga, sari or shalwar kameez?
Now, I mean, shalwar kameez, is home because Geet loved her shalwar kameezes.
Yes.
And for me, it's like, घर की बात है. Kurta and shalwar, like I love it. I mean, I feel I look the best. I'm most comfortable also in that. So I'll go with that.
Shalwar kameez. So I'm sure there are a lot of people who have a lot of questions. I'm going to open the floor for that. But before that, let's talk more about Kareena Kapoor Khan. 10 million plus followers. You have followers all over the world. So when you land, you know, because I follow Instagram a lot, and I can say that I admire your unapologetic Kareena Kapoor Khan ways. You know, be it about your family, your children, the manner in which you make it so seamless about yourself, and you have been one of the most phenomenal actors of all times. So what will you say when you move from Cannes to Bollywood? How has the lens changed towards Indian actors? And what do people tell you when you are there?
Firstly, I think everyone is always fascinated by our nation, our culture. Because it's such a great heritage and tradition that I think everyone, when you say you're from India, they're like, wow, we have to come to India once. Because whether it's the food, whether it's the culture, whether it's, like you said, the craftsmanship, the fashion, it's historical places, it's places of worship, everything has something magnificent about it, which just, like I said, just, captures the imagination of people around the world. As far as Indian movies are concerned, I think there's a huge craze, a huge phenomenon, and a huge respect for our Indian movies. And one reason which I've noticed is that because our Indian movies are always true to itself. We're very authentic. हमें नाच गाना पसंद है, हमें इमोशन पसंद है, रोना धोना पसंद है, मार धाड़ पसंद है. So we're constantly being true to our culture, which I love about it. गीत को जाना है घर छोड़ के तो जाना ही है, वो करके दिखाएगी, वो करेगी अपनी लाइफ.
It is your favorite character.
I mean, I think
all of 25 years.
She represents a certain Punjabiness and a girl who has dreams, who wants to dream big and follow her heart and just do what she wants. And I think that's how that character, 25 years or 20 years later, is still resonating in a kind of pop culture way to India. So I think that is one reason why our films are watched globally and enjoyed in our language, in our Hindi language, because it's the song, the dance, they wait for that. So we have to kind of, be true to our heritage, which we are, and that's what everyone loves about it. And that's what I think also sets us apart, because, I mean, we have so many different kinds of cinema, like, which we watch, whether it's Korean, whether it's French, whatever, whether it's different regional kind of cinema, international cinema. But somewhere, I think, you still enjoy doing Natu, Natu, Natu on that stage of the Oscars. It kind of gives you that beat, that upbeat vibe. So somewhere India is got that representation, and it feels nice to be true to it.
And you often congratulate your contemporaries, and you also congratulate the winners very often. I mean, it's great pride, particularly when Indians win these laurels on foreign stages,
of
international
course.
awards.
I think, Para-Olympians are Olympians. I think we've done so well, and we're going from strength to strength. So it kind of, I feel if the nation doesn't participate in their glory also, I think it doesn't feel like we want to encourage them. We want them to feel that, we're all watching them.
It's also okay, 1.5 billion का फायदा क्या है अगर हम लोग celebrate नहीं कर सकें एक दूसरे को?
I think so. The celebration is the main thing. That's also part of, very much a part of our culture, ना? कि हर चीज़ में हम कुछ भी हो, Indian हम कुछ भी हो celebrate कर लेते हैं, हाँ? खुश रहते हैं. तो it doesn't matter कि सबसे बड़ा celebration हो या सबसे छोटा celebration हो. The idea is that I think we have learned to make the best of what we have.
And right now, everybody is watching Kareena Kapoor Khan in Buckingham Murders. So, international collaborations and crossovers. Which is the favorite one for you?
Well, I mean, Buckingham Murders was just like a small kind of, more like a crossover in the sense we shot it in London, so we kind of wanted to keep it Hindi, English, be true to its kind of authenticity of the film, the way it was, the area that it was being shot in. So it's such a special film, and it's going to come on Netflix on the 8th of November. So whoever didn't watch it in the cinemas, I really want them to go and watch it, because I somehow feel, for me, being a first-time producer on that film, it was just something that बहुत ही special था, and मुझे लग रहा है कि मेरे career का best performance है, तो definitely I want people to watch it.
Okay, so you have made a pitch as well.
Listen, I'm an actor. I have to, अभी आदत सी हो गई है थोड़ा pitch करना, but I not really pitching. I'm just, after 25 years, I feel that I want people to just watch this film.
I'm sure we
But
will.
coming back to the collaboration, I think the best collaboration has to be, क्योंकि हम दिलजीत दोसांझ के बहुत बड़े fan हैं, वो तो सब जानते हैं. तो crew में नैना का गाना जो था, and he has taken it and Punjabi music to a completely different level and put us on, the global billboards. So whether it's his collaboration on Naina with Ed Sheeran or whatever, I think he's just been so true again to his roots and his culture. So for me, I think Naina was such a special song. So collaborating, that was a great international collaboration for him all.
And I think he's also your fan.
हम तो उनके fan हैं, वो पता नहीं कि हमें, well, I hope so, because I'm such a big fan of his.
Since you're talking about pitches, so let's talk about you as a global ambassador and art ambassador, Indian cinema ambassador. What's your elevator pitch for brand India?
Well, like I said, that in India, I feel is in films, because I'm an actor, I can speak in terms of films, that I think we're being, like I said, very true to ourselves, where I want people to watch more and more Indian films. I mean, now I think whether it's Lapata Ladies that is now going on to the Oscars, it's such a moment. And also, if you see the films that have always been chosen have also been so true in its roots. It's like the story of Lapata Ladies is something that, I'm sure it happens.
Yes.
You feel like, and you feel close to it. And you see journey of two women. And the whole idea is that it's put India and its emotion on the map. Everyone is talking about it. It's not like, कि films dub हो रही हैं, Russian में, German में, French में. I think Indian language में films देख रहे हैं. And for me, I would like to tell everybody, I think globally, since it's a global summit, that our language is actually very easy to understand. And now with, those who can't, I think now we have the OTT platform, which is having subtitles. You can enjoy at least our films so much more. So I think that is something that I would like to definitely stress on, that try to watch our films in our Indian language and enjoy that a little bit more.
And Karina, you are part of the 100 crore club, the crew.
But अब तो films बदल रही है, क्योंकि 100 crore से अब 500 crore की तरफ जा रहे हैं, 600 crore, 700 crore. So it's growing, and which is great. The business is growing.
So we have seen all women crew from being a producer, writer, director, and also actors. Just before your session, we had two very, very fascinating women. Anasuya Sen-Gupta, who has won Best Actress at Cannes. Yes. So, we had them, and Mansi, who won Best Actor at La Cinef. So we have seen women achieve that, and Indian women in particular. So, when you look at all women crew, what is it that plays on your mind? And, you are a strong feminist who have made Indians celebrate Indian women in particular.
हाँ, अभी तो मैंने क्रू भी किया था, क्योंकि लोग कहते हैं ना कि when you do a heist film तो सिर्फ लड़के कर सकते हैं, सिर्फ हीरोज कर सकते हैं, बट हम हीरोइंस ने करके दिखाया कि हम भी कर सकते हैं, और सब ने एंजॉय भी किया. तो आई थिंक देयर इज समथिंग अबाउट बीइंग टुगेदर with all, like an all women crew, like working with no heroes in the film and working with all girls, or maybe a female director, like I worked with Reema Kadgi in Talash. I think there's just that sense of belonging that you have, that we can do this, we will do this. So many people always say कि नहीं, अगर बड़ा स्टार नहीं है, हीरो नहीं है, देखते ना कि पिक्चर चलेगी कि 100 crore मारेगी या 200 crore मारेगी. But the idea is that people are still, they want to watch these movies. They're going to watch these movies. So there's nothing that women can't really do,
So it was almost like collectively lifting those 100 crores, you, Tabu, and
and uplifting each other, no?
Yeah,
the whole idea is that, no? Women also have to uplift each other, I feel.
Yes, so, in terms of your own legacy, 25 years and counting, and the choices that you have made from refugee to Geet to Talash to now, it's very diverse and very reflective of how Kareena has grown in the cinema and has understood what are the requirements of Indian cinema globally, because the world is watching. We are a digital world, so very, very connected world.
So actually, I was in Greece recently, and a local person came up to me and said that I saw your film on Netflix. So Jani Jahan, which she had watched, and she was excited about it. And she was like, it's such an amazing film. So I think that I took it as a compliment that, so many people are watching our movies, across the world, which is amazing. And my choice of roles has to keep changing. And I think that's what I've tried to always achieve in trying to grow with the audiences. Because audiences का भी taste बदलता है हर 4-5 साल में, generations बदलते हैं, लोगों का ख्यालात बदलता है. तो हमें भी एक्टर्स की रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी होती है कि ऑडियंस के साथ साथ हमें भी बदलना चाहिए. अपने एक्टिंग में you have to reflect upon your performances and try to do something different. So that is something that I take great pride in doing, in changing myself in my different characters. So from Pooh to Geet or Talash or Jane Jahan or Buckingham Murders. I've tried to play different people on screen, and I really, really enjoy that.
So I'm going to open the floor to questions now. And where is Jumru? Jumru, I have a surprise for you, Kareena. We have a senior of yours from Welham.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Always.
Where is our favorite Rini?
Here.
Rini.
Thank you.
Rini, you have a message for your junior?
Hi. As a senior, could I say hi, Junie?
Oh. I'm so happy. Always great to meet a fellow Welhamite.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you love your salwar kameez, because that was our uniform.
I know, with the tadpoles. How can you forget? And the blue dupatta.
And do you recognize this?
Oh God, yes, my God. You're a proud Welhamite.
I'm a proud Welhamite, yes. And I'm sure you are too. And we're all very proud of you as a Welhamite.
Thank you.
And good luck to you in your career.
Thank you so much.
And I'd just like to say, go Welham.
Yeah, of course, always go Welham.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am.
Jumru, go ahead.
And Kareena, if I may, hoegi Rihanna, hoegi Beyonce, sadi ta hi Rihanna, hi Beyonce. Once again, give it up for her. And now I want to go to somebody else who wants to ask a question. There you go. Yes, sir.
Hi, Kareena. Thanks for this opportunity. Hi, Kareena. I'm a food and travel influencer.
Okay.
And you must have traveled the world. And like you said, Delhi is a home to you. So what's that one place where our Bebo goes to, that one favorite restaurant in Delhi?
In Delhi?
Yes.
Bukhara.
Oh.
We all love the dal.
Any street food options?
Street food options. I mean, gaadi mein parathe wali gali always.
Chandni Chowk.
Chandni Chowk. I mean, I haven't gone in years, but gobsmacking food in Delhi. And the whole world knows that I'm crazy about food, and I'm very unapologetic about it.
And you love chole bhature.
I love chole bhature, aloo paratha. I love all of these.
Recently you had it.
Biryani, of course. I mean, I'm a Kapoor, yaar.
This is more like a food podcast now.
Yeah. I can go on about it.
One more question, I think, from a young girl who's probably a young Geet here. Yes.
Thank you so much. Hello, ma'am. I'm Nancy. I'm a student of University of Delhi. I'm pursuing political science honors. There are some things I wanted to ask you. You have played such diverse roles, and you're an actor who gives your all to the characters. You're so confident, and so I wanted to ask, do those characters influence your daily life? Do they change your behavior? Secondly, you're so self-assured, you're so confident. I've seen you from my childhood years. You have formed my personality in a way. So I wanted to ask if you had some advice for youngsters like me, like my friend. We're merely 20 now. And if you could give us some advice so that we could find our footing in this fast-paced world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the first part of the question was that do my characters leave any, influence on my day-to-day life? I think that thoda bahut, when you definitely stay with that particular character for a time, you start enjoying being that person. So when you're shooting for the film, it's good to be in that, in your day-to-day life as well, So it helps you stay in that rhythm. Though I don't bring many of my characters home and my work home because I'm very switch on, switch off. In that sense, मैं बहुत lucky हूँ because otherwise then, it'll be really tough to, be in that character, in that zone all the time. Because I do few dark characters also which I enjoy playing, As far as advice goes, I definitely would like to say that for young girls of today, saying no should not make them feel that they're not confident. No means no, whether it's something that you're not comfortable doing, whether it's something that you're not comfortable wearing, whether it's something that you're not comfortable eating, shape, size, a job that you're looking forward to doing. If you feel it's something less for you, one should not take it. One should be so self-assured that one can push yourself to achieve and do something better. So I think no being an answer should always be something that should be reassuring rather than making you feel underconfident.
That's very well taken. Thank you so much, Karina, for that advice. I'm sure several girls in the audience would be taking that home with them. Yes, Jumru, we can...
Yeah, one more question here. Hi, good afternoon. We are discussing, I must say you're looking gorgeous as always. We're discussing feminism and womanhood, and you've done movies which are all women. Even after all that, you women in general are not paid as much as male co-stars.
Good one.
You are arguably the femme fatale of Bollywood, but even you are not paid as much as one of the Khans, maybe your own husband. Why is that, and what can you do about it?
Like I said,
what are your thoughts?
No means no. So now it's a time that where I think you feel if this is not worthy enough for me or my character or worthy enough for myself, I'm not going to do it. And I will wait. I will push myself to maybe do better, that they realize that I'm as equally good as my male counterpart.
So you have to make the 1,000 crores. Yeah? The 1,000 crore club.
The 1,000 crore club. Koshish to jari hai.
All the best. All the best. Lovely. Cheers. And one more question here from this lady who's from Hungary. Yes.
Thank you so much. Karina, first of all, I love all your movies. Jab Bhi Mat is absolutely favorite. And I think you are the best Indian actress, according to my opinion. And since we are here at the global kind of summit and talking about NDTV going global, I would love to understand your aspirations to go global and maybe kind of explore even more like Hollywood or something else.
I think, of course, I think the world is coming closer. Everyone's, watching everybody's films. Everyone's coming together. So much connectivity, especially, I think, through events, films, OTT platforms. Definitely an international collaboration with an Indian actor, an American actor, who knows, a Korean film. I think, like I said, films also, language knows that's not a barrier, knows no boundaries, So never say never. I'm a huge fan of Meryl Streep. I would just love to stand in the frame with her, but I don't know if that would happen, but always dreams do come true.
So I'll take that thought a little forward. So who is your dream global collaborator?
I think like I said, I'm a huge fan of Meryl Streep. And there's so many, master crafters who are breaking boundaries, whether it's Korean films, different languages. I don't know, who knows, anything is possible, I think, in today's time. I've never really pursued any dreams to go to Hollywood. It's never been on my agenda. But like with the world coming closer, who knows? We might have just, I don't know, to see her someday, to see Meryl Streep someday, to just, see if she's real.
So is K-series really on cards? Because you've spoken quite a bit about Korean dramas. So is it something that's there in the works?
No, I who knows, I wish, I wish for sure that I would love to explore Korean drama, because I think the world is watching, their series, their films, so hugely popular.
I love them.
Yeah, everyone's watching it.
Yes, everybody's watching K-series. Yes, so we'll move the mic again. And let's go this side.
Who do we want to go to?
Karina takes a pick.
Yeah, Karina, why don't you choose?
I'm happy with, I can't say one, because I want
No, what we usually do is we ask them to display best of their smile and then you choose them basis that. Okay, please display your best smile. And Karina.
He's smiling so nicely. He's like really, he's like
gentleman here.
Yeah. But we
So
give the girl a chance as well, because I can't.
Thank you so much. Arun Gupta from Delhi. And first thing I like to tell ma'am, my date of birth also is 21st of September. But year of is different, so I will not.
You don't want to reveal your age.
Yeah,
huh?
yes, yeah.
ये age नहीं reveal करना है.
I respect ma'am.
अच्छा, नहीं मेरा age तो सबको पता है. मैं 1980 में born हुई थी.
83. I am 83 born, ma'am.
Okay जी.
So ma'am, I have I think 65 movies from the Refugee 2000 so far. I have seen almost all the movies you have.
65 films.
From
I think 70 almost. 70 now?
70, maybe it's 65, 5 something. Yeah. I miss it. And Jab We Met is one of the best character I found, Geet. And yeah, it's very, very nicest moment. And yeah, seriously, I'm nervous, so very difficult to
Don't
ask.
be sir. Do you want her to say any Jab We Met dialogue, sir?
Yeah, मैं अपनी favorite हूँ. This is one of the ma'am.
आपने अभी बोल दिया है dialogue इतने अच्छे से. मैं अपनी favorite हूँ.
And favorite song, ma'am. अनदेखी अनजानी सी पगली सी दीवानी सी. I still remember this.
अब गाना मत बोलना क्योंकि मेरी आवाज इतनी अच्छी नहीं है. हाँ?
आपको तो नहीं attempt करना गाना सर?
अनदेखी अनजानी सी पगली सी दीवानी सी जाने वो कैसी होगी रे. And in fact, my wife is with me, ma'am.
He's specifying that.
You're quite a gutsy man, sir, I must say.
So there is a woman there, please.
Yeah, the girl.
Let's go to her.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm from London. It's lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
I absolutely love you. I wanted to talk a bit about your work on UNICEF and what was one of the most memorable things that you've done with them.
So that's something that is also extremely close to my heart. And now being National Ambassador for UNICEF has been such a pride, because it's something that I've nursed and wanted to do over the years, First we started with child education, and now we're doing so many wonderful things, with mental health for children. It's a topic that I think no one, addresses so much.
No.
And it must be heard, it must be spoken. So we do a lot of work together, and I enjoy my time with, with them, doing things for secondary education, primary education, young children. We did a beautiful campaign for newborn babies on breastfeeding, which was very close to my heart, because at that time, I had just delivered Temur. So that was something that I was very passionate about, and the timing just happened to coincide with that. So we're going to, keep doing some wonderful work, and it's something that it just comes naturally, because being a mother to two of boys now, I use my personal experiences, when I talk at events for them, when we work together on, on ground. I use like what it would be like for Tim and Jay. So it's that close to my heart.
Thank you so much. It's really inspiring. Thank you.
So when it is about what kind of world would you be seeing? What would you want Jay to grow up into? In the sense, the world that he should be seeing?
A world of love, happiness, peace. Somebody who would always be and lend his voice to the truth, voice to safety for women, knowing that, he has a brother doesn't mean that he doesn't have a right to protect other girls. He will be somebody's, father or husband someday. So I hope he values what his mother has done for him because he sees his mother and father go to work. So he understands that it's important for women to be safe, to go to work, to feel happy. These are things that I don't hide from him. He's watching it every day. So I want him to grow up knowing and normalizing that, women are as equal as men and they can also be the front runners because he's seeing it every day.
You know, Kareena, because that brings me to something that we saw just a few weeks back when the entire country was outraging about the incident which happened in, very, very worrying incident which happened in Kolkata. So, that safety security that you speak about, and particularly for women, and everybody then spoke about how it's important for young boys to be taught to respect women.
I think it starts at home.
It starts.
And it starts for young boys at a very tender age of maybe 4 or 5 when they start understanding, difference between a boy and a girl and how women should be respected, how a girl should be respected. So it's up to starting at home for mothers to understand and tell their young little boys. And this conversation is important to have with your child, however uncomfortable but it must be told, they must be shown the way. Also, children understand with more words than action. So if they kind of also see their mother doing things, like now Taimur understands that, I've told him I'm speaking today at a very important event. So he's excited, he's like, what are you going to talk about? When I go home, he might ask me. So we'll talk about different things that I said. So they like to, see through action. So these conversations are important to have.
So let's end this conversation and I'll ask you, what do we not know about Kareena Kapoor Khan?
What do we not know? I think that...
you have been very, very transparent about your life.
Always, no? About my life?
Yeah, so we know so much through Instagram in particular. And you have spoken about it on multiple platforms. So let me ask you, what do we not know about you?
What do we not know? Oh my God, what do we not know? You all know exactly how I am. I think I've been so open with my fans, and I think that's the loyalty that they have towards me is also because they know is what you see is what you get. And I don't want to ever change that way of, myself.
So with that, thank you so much, Kareena Kapoor Khan, Bebo, and
thank you.
The package that you are. So pleasure, honor, and thank you so much for this session at NDTV World Summit.